Part 9. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 81. Testing Monument, to put it bluntly, can test a cultivator's current realm, as well as his own luck and talent. In the world of cultivating immortals, luck is not illusory, but real. Some people are born with better luck than others. They can pick up money just by going out, or buy ancient skills or ancient medicinal materials that no one cares about at the auction house. Some people spend their entire lives standing still. No matter how hard they try, they can only be a stepping stone for others. Those chosen ones, their talents and luck are given by God. As long as they work hard, they can succeed. These are people with great luck. And yeah, you is one of them. Who will go on stage first? Lan Murian looked around and said. A charming woman came to Lan Murian's side lightly, smiled and said, "I'll try first." The two sisters looked at each other and then tacitly looked away. I don't know what my senior sister looks like, could it be that she looks similar to Sister Fei? Musian in the audience looked normal, but there was a bit of curiosity in his eyes, looking at the two sisters with envy. Lan Fei stretched out her white jade hand and gently placed it on the stone tablet. A ray of spiritual energy was injected into the stone tablet, causing the dark stone tablet to instantly emit a pale white light. 8th level of Qi training. When the true level of Lan Fei appeared on the stone tablet, everyone in the audience was a little surprised, staring at the tall woman with burning eyes. Fei, this name is quite famous in Tianqian City. She is the chief auctioneer of Chenexai auction house. Many of them have seen her, but no one would have thought that a chief auctioneer would have the level of 8th level of Qi training. What does the white light on the stone tablet mean? Someone in the audience suddenly asked, staring at the pale white light emitting from the stone tablet. I remember that the last sect assessment also used a similar stone tablet to test the talent and luck of the cultivators. If I remember correctly, this light represents luck. The white light means that Miss Fei's luck is higher than that of normal cultivators. If it is a person with average luck, there will be no light on this stone tablet. For people with extremely bad luck, the stone tablet will show black light. If luck can determine the life of a cultivator, then what is the point of cultivation? Someone said rather unconvinced. A cultivator next to him sneered, if you have to say it, luck can really determine the life of a cultivator. Think about it, you and a friend who grew up together have the same talent, but the other person has more adventures than you. By the time you reach the God refining realm, he may have obtained some inheritance and promoted to the return to void realm by relying on his own luck. Cultivating immortals is not something that can be achieved by talent and hard work alone. Talent is one aspect, and luck is another. Someone in the crowd said to himself thoughtfully, so I was caught by my Taoist partner when I went to the Jiao Fangxi 2 days ago. Could it be that I am unlucky? You were caught because you go there often. There was a hearty laugh in the crowd. For a while, a burst of friendly male laughter came from the arena. Huang Manting twisted a strand of hair with her fingertips, looked sideways, and said with a smile, if you hadn't called out Master Mu's name in the last 2 days, Master Mu's relationship with Sister Lingxian and the others that day would probably not have been exposed. It seems that Master Mu's luck should not be very good either. Musian smiled calmly, I didn't intend to hide it deliberately. After all, I promised Sister Lingxian and Sister Qian'er, and I will fulfill my promise no matter what. Musian tried to create a tall image of a promise is worth 1,000 gold in front of the Yes sisters. Huang Manting curled her lips, as if she was disdainful. This can only deceive some innocent little girls. Huang Manting just thought of this, but found that Ye Lingxian and Ye Qian's expressions seemed to be much softer. She couldn't help but narrow her eyes slightly. It seems that Master Mu's words just now were meant for the Yes sisters. His target was very clear from the beginning, the Yes sisters. This made Huang Manting feel a little dissatisfied. In terms of appearance alone, how is she inferior to the Yes sisters? This Musian ignored the women who threw themselves into his arms, and chose to pursue two stinky girls who were still wet behind the ears. Could it be that he had some special interests? But it shouldn't be. After all, Biruoxi, who he pursued before, was a queen type in both figure and appearance. What on earth is this man thinking? Yayu is on stage. A voice suddenly came from the crowd, and Musian raised his head and looked. He saw a boy in a black robe and a slightly thin figure walking slowly up the stairs. He listened to the commotion and discussion from the audience, and there was no expression on his face. But if you look closely, you will find that Yayu actually enjoys people's gazes like this, but he is just suppressing his inner joy. He glanced at Musian inadvertently. But he just saw Musian reaching out to touch Ya Lingxuan's long hair that fell like a waterfall. This action was so subtle that neither Huang Manting nor Ye Qian noticed it. Ya Lingxian glanced over and said in a voice transmission, "Master Mu, please respect yourself." Musian also said in a voice transmission, "There is a fly in your hair, I just helped you to get rid of it." Ya Lingxian obviously didn't believe it, but seeing that Musian had withdrawn his hand, he gave up. It seems that she still likes me well, and she didn't get angry, Musian understood in his heart, and continued to transmit, "Sister Lingxian." Ding. As soon as he started to transmit, Musian suddenly felt a buzzing sound in his head. Ya Lingxian refused the private chat and glanced at him lightly. Musian tried to transmit again, but only a ding sound came from his head. Ya Lingxian still refused to chat privately. This girl is quite arrogant. Musian had to retract his gaze and gently put his hand on the back of Ye Qian's hand. Ye Qian's body trembled slightly, and he glanced at Musian in panic, and then quickly retracted his gaze and didn't look at him. But he didn't push Musian's hand away. Musian raised his head and looked at Yayu, who was staring at this place, and gave him a thumbs up. This action seemed to be encouraging, but in Yayu's eyes, it felt like, "Your two sisters are great, I like them both." The ridicule value was maxed out. Yayu almost couldn't suppress his anger and rushed off the stage, but he knew in his heart that he must not lose his composure at this moment. He took a deep breath to adjust his mood, and then placed his palm on the black stone tablet under countless gazes. At that moment, a golden light shot up into the sky. The golden light almost overshadowed the sunlight, and it was extremely dazzling on the high platform. Although he was not handsome, Yayu at this moment made many female cultivators' eyes full of brilliance. A man of great luck. Yayu, Qi Training Realm, 2nd grade. In fact, Yayu's realm was indeed a bit lower than those who participated in the sect assessment this time. But you have to know that Yayu's realm fell below the refining realm for a long time in the past, and it took him less than a few months to rush back to the Qi Training realm. Looking at the golden light on the black stone tablet, and Yayu, who was silent and pretending to be a master on the stage, everyone was full of emotion. This eldest son of the Ye family is really amazing. If he can concentrate on cultivation in the future, his future is limitless. He is gifted, and even his luck is much higher than that of ordinary cultivators. If there is a chosen son in this world, it is probably this person. The cultivators in the audience were moved, and Musian also sighed, "This Yayu's talent is really amazing. Unlike me, I can only practice Qi at the 4th level." After practicing hard, when Musian said this, he slowly shook his head and sighed. Huang Manting opened her mouth slightly, and couldn't help but want to mock, thinking that you used to go to the Jiao Fangxi every 3 or 5 days. Can this be called hard practice? It's better to say that it's amazing to practice Qi at the 4th level after fishing for 3 days and drying the net for 2 days. However, considering the occasion, she still held back what she wanted to say. Ya Lingxian glanced at him casually, and seeing his depressed look, she frowned slightly and said lightly, "On the road of cultivating immortals, talent and luck alone are not enough, and character is also very important." Yes, Sister Lingxian often told me before that cultivating immortals is a test of character. Many geniuses have luck and talent, but still fall in the middle of the road. Yechian nodded and comforted him. But with Yayu's luck, it's hard to have any problems, Huang Manting suddenly said. With such great luck, even a pig has unlimited future prospects. As long as Yayu has a normal mind and doesn't do anything stupid, his future achievements will not be too low. What do you think I'm fighting against? Musian chuckled secretly. Although he regarded Yayu as a fool, he never underestimated him. First, there is a mysterious old man in Yayu's body, and second, Yayu has great luck. Let alone Musian, even if Lan Murian attacked here, Yayu would probably have a way to escape. This is the blessing of luck. So Musian never thought of directly solving Yayu head-on. This is not realistic. But he can weaken Yayu's luck little by little. This has been confirmed to be feasible. In the future, when he reaches the God-refining realm, he may come to me for revenge. Musian then sighed and tried to fish. Huang Manting raised her eyebrows slightly and said, "Are you still afraid of something?" "After all, he is a person with great luck," Musian said. Ya Lingxian said lightly, "Instead of worrying about this little thing, it is better to concentrate on cultivation. As for brother Yayu, there is no problem. Sister Lingxian means that you can protect me in the future." Musian looked sideways. Ya Lingxian hesitated, and finally raised her snow-white chin with dignity and said softly. "After all, the other party helped them a lot, and it is also right to return a favor." Yechian hesitated and said, "Although my current realm is not high, but I should be able to help in the future." Musian sighed and said, "If your brother Yayu heard it, he would not beat me up directly, right?" Ya Lingxian pursed her lips, unhappy, and said, "He is not your opponent now. After all, Musian is also a 4th grade Qi training, and is close to the 5th grade Qi training. It is impossible for Yayu to defeat Musian now. And Yayu's talent is good, but Ya Lingxian is also confident in his own talent." While several people were chatting, Yayu had already walked down the high platform under the admiring eyes of everyone. He glanced in the direction of Musian inadvertently, and saw that several people were chatting leisurely, but this time his mood was extremely calm. Musian could only chat with them now. After he went on stage, everyone would know how useless the eldest son of the Mu family was. By then, Lingxian and Qianer would surely wake up. Yayu sat down in his original position, enjoying the occasional glances from the cultivators beside him, and quietly waited for Musian to appear. Next, Huang Manting, Yechian, Gongsun Cheng and others went on stage one after another, and all received excellent evaluations in the test of the test tablet. Not long after, there was a sudden uproar in the crowd. On the high platform, a girl in a purple dress and elegant temperament raised her hand and touched the stone tablet lightly. Almost at that moment, a brilliant golden light completely lit up the dark stone tablet. Ya Lingxian was bathed in the golden light, slightly closed her eyes, and her curled eyelashes held the golden light. Her white face was stained with a warm luster, looking sacred and inviolable. At this moment, people's eyes were focused on her. This girl, who had been extremely low-key in Tianqian City in the past, showed her amazing talent and luck in this test. Ya Lingxian did not stay on the stage for too long. She stepped down the stairs and looked at Musian. Musian smiled at her. Ya Lingxuan's mouth curled up slightly, but she pretended to be reserved, raised her proud white chin, nodded slightly, and then stopped looking at him. With Ya Lingxuan's performance, the people who took the subsequent tests all looked dim under her brilliance. "Master Mu, don't you go on stage and try." Yayu looked at Musian and the Yes sisters communicating again, sometimes making them cover their mouths and laugh, and finally couldn't help but speak, interrupting the harmonious and beautiful scene of several people. Musian didn't even turn his head, but he noticed that everyone's eyes were on him, and he knew he couldn't continue to slack off. Because he could feel that Lan Mulian was also looking at him. Under the gazes of the crowd, Musian walked slowly onto the stage. He and Lan Murian exchanged a glance, and said in a voice transmission, "Senior sister, I'm so nervous." Lan Murian replied in a cold voice transmission, "It's just an ordinary test, there's nothing to be nervous about, just relax a little. Can you chat with me and encourage me later?" Musian continued to transmit the voice. Lan Murian looked at him meaningfully, with a smile on her face, and said in a voice transmission, "Okay." It just so happened that she also wanted to talk to Musian about Swilian. Musian's eyes swept over Ye Lingxian and Ye Qian in the audience, and both of them had encouraging eyes. His eyes fell on Wei Mengru, who was always standing alone in the shadows. The maid also looked at him with a blank expression. Musian gave her a gentle smile. Wei Mengru pouted and retracted her gaze, looking disdainful. Musian didn't mind, and his eyes returned to the black stone tablet. Next, it was time to show the real skills. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 82. Under the stage, everyone's eyes were silently staring at the young man in front of the high stage. Although in the eyes of most people, the eldest son of the Mu family was a loser, but there were also many people who thought that Musian was not a loser, but was simply addicted to beauty and not doing his job properly. If he practiced seriously, his current realm would definitely not be limited to this. In the past, there was a saying circulating in the streets of Tianqian City, "Born in the Mu family, even a pig can reach the Qi training realm before the age of 15. This is the truth. With the huge background and resources of the Mu family, even if it is a loser, they can rely on resources to create a young genius who can reach the Qi training realm before the age of 15. Therefore, many people are a little curious about Musian's luck at this time. Reincarnation is also a technical job. Musian was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. I think his luck should not be too bad. Ye Qian subconsciously grasped the hem of her skirt and looked at the boy on the stage worriedly. Ye Lingxian stretched out her palm, gently grasped the back of her sister's hand, and said helplessly, "Why do you care so much about him? Have you forgotten how bad his reputation was in Tianqian City before?" Ye Lingxian was a little helpless. Looking at Ye Qian's worried eyes, it is clear that her sister has obviously fallen. Ye Qian pursed her lips, secretly glanced at her sister, and said, "Brother Mu is not a bad person." He also gave sister a snow lotus. She continued. Obviously, Ye Qian has always been a little concerned about Musian giving Ye Lingxian a snow lotus, but she never said it. Ye Lingxian curled her lips and said disdainfully, "That kind of thing will wither in a few days, it is completely worthless, and I will throw it away in 2 days. Ye Qian puffed up her cheeks and said, "Since you want to throw it away, why not give it to me?" This sister actually talked back. Ye Lingxian frowned slightly and gently poked her sister's waist with her fingers. Ye Qian twisted her waist very sensitively, almost laughed, and begged for mercy, "Sister, I know I was wrong, sorry, I won't say such things again." Ye Lingxian smiled and said, "You never talked back to me before, and you are really bolder after you have someone you like." Ye Qian gently pressed her sister's hand and explained, "I just think he is a very good brother, it's different from what my sister said." Ye Lingxian chuckled and took a deep look at this simple and pitiful sister. What Ye Qian was thinking, she knew it just by looking at the shy expression on her face. "He's going to start." At this time, Huang Manting's voice suddenly sounded, and the two sisters raised their heads and looked at the high platform. Musian was wearing a luxurious robe, with a handsome face, pale skin like uneven nutrition, and a gentle smile on his face, just like the brother next door, which was the easiest to attract the attention of the little sister. In the past, Musian attracted many girls with his handsome face. If he hadn't become famous later, he would have been able to change girls every night. Musian stood in front of the stone tablet, looking up at the tall black stone tablet. If a black light came out, wouldn't it expose my bad luck? That would be too embarrassing. Although he had a gentle and calm smile, Musian was thinking about this in his heart. Even he couldn't help but feel a little nervous at this moment. Although he was a little confident in his talent, his role was the villain. How good can the villain's luck be? If the villain's luck was good, how could he become a stepping stone for the protagonist? Now, there are not only the Yes sisters and Wei Mengru in the audience, but also Yayu who is waiting to mock him, and senior sister Lan who is watching him from the side. It would be embarrassing if a black light suddenly appears and exposes him. Forget it, this is the first time to test the luck. If it doesn't emit light, it will be considered a success. Musian thought of this in his heart, and gently touched the black stone tablet with his palm. Injected a wisp of spiritual energy into the stone tablet. Lan Murian glanced at it and said lightly, "Chi Training Realm, 4th grade." After that, she looked at the stone tablet that had been motionless for a few more times, and raised her eyebrows slightly, as if she was a little surprised. The fact that the stone tablet was motionless means that Musian's luck is the same as that of ordinary people. Is this guy's luck just at the level of an ordinary cultivator? For a proud person like Musian, this might be a little hard to accept. Lan Murian subconsciously glanced at Musian, but found that there was no loss on his face, but he just looked at the stone tablet, as if thinking about something. Lan Murian pursed her lips, thinking about how to start. At this moment, she suddenly saw a relieved smile on Musian's face. Musian naturally would not be disappointed, but rather, he was a little surprised. After his palm touched the stone tablet, Musian had some kind of induction with the test tablet, so he could clearly feel that the stone tablet did not react, not because of his ordinary luck, but because a wisp of spiritual energy was not enough for the stone tablet to show its original light. This means that his luck is likely to be very great, so great that it is difficult for the test tablet to complete the test with just that wisp of spiritual energy. Seeing that the stone tablet did not move at all, the audience could not help but get a little agitated for a while. The luck of the eldest master of the Mu family is actually the same as that of ordinary people. I thought there would be at least a red light. There are 5 kinds of luck that can be shown by the test monument, from the black of bad luck to the nothing of ordinary people, and then there are red, purple, and gold. Generally speaking, the prince of the royal family and the emperor of the current dynasty will test out purple light. This is the purple chi of the emperor. As for the golden light, it is extremely rare. In the past, the sect has conducted so many assessments, and most people have never seen the golden light, but today, they have seen it twice. On the contrary, Musian, who they had some expectations at the beginning, was disappointed. I thought that this young master of the Mu family was at least a person with some luck, but I never thought that the test monument was completely motionless. Looking at this scene, Yayu's mouth corners inadvertently raised an arc. Although Musian's final test did not test out black light, which made him a little disappointed, but the other party's purely ordinary luck should also make Lingxian and others recognize some facts. His potential is much higher than Musian. Not only talent, but also luck. Yayu subconsciously looked at the 2 girls not far in front of him. Ya Lingxian kept staring at the platform calmly, while Yeqian beside her also stared at the boy on the platform with some unconcealed worry in her eyes. This scene made Yayu's heart hurt like being pricked by a needle, and the jealousy in his heart burned uncontrollably. This chosen son of heaven did not know that girls are blind to the opposite sex they like. Let alone the level of ordinary cultivators tested by Musian today. Even if Musian tested the unlucky black light today, they would not dislike it, but would only comfort him afterwards. Maybe Musian would take advantage of that opportunity to kiss Yeqian and hold his sister's hand. Yayu frowned, looked up at the young man on the platform, and said loudly, "Master Mu, since the test is over, come down." Musian was too lazy to pay attention to Yayu. He looked at Lan Murian beside him. Seeing that she was staring at him silently, he couldn't help but whispered, "Senior sister, my luck is very strong. Can the test tablet withstand it?" "What is this guy trying to do again?" Lan Murian raised her eyebrows slightly and looked at Musian with doubt. Then she nodded silently and whispered, "It's okay." Musian retracted his gaze, slightly adjusted the cauldron in his body, took a deep breath, and exhaled slowly. "The test has just begun." Musian stretched out his palm and pushed the stone tablet, and poured a stream of spiritual energy into the stone tablet in one go. At that moment, the dark stone tablet vibrated faintly. Under the stage, the whispers just now suddenly quieted down. They all reacted. Musian's test seems to be not over yet. Lan Mulian also stared at the test tablet in doubt. She was an extremely intelligent woman. When she saw this scene, she thought that Musian might not have ordinary luck, but that the spiritual energy just now was difficult to complete the test. How great is his luck? As the dark stone tablet quietly lit up, Musian felt the soft light shining on his face and glanced at the audience inadvertently. Ye Lingxian and Ye Qian were both a little dazed, staring straight at the stone tablet on the stage. In a shadowy corner, Wei Mengru looked at him with a strange look in her eyes. Musian's eyes finally fell on Ye Yu, who was staring at the stone tablet on the stage in astonishment, his face full of disbelief. It's no wonder that Ye Yu was so surprised. Even Musian himself had never thought that he would have such great luck. Judging from the light, it is probably the same golden light as Ye Yu and Ye Lingxian. Musian turned his head slightly and glanced at the stone tablet behind him casually. At this moment, the dark stone tablet exuded a soft pink light that was not dazzling, and the pink light almost completely enveloped him. Musian was slightly stunned. How could there be pink luck? At this time, someone suddenly whispered. Strange, how can I feel Bairuoxi's aura from the light? Before, Bairuoxi made a move in front of the martial arts arena. Many people saw it at that time, so they could naturally judge what Bairuoxi's aura was like. Ye Lingxian frowned slightly and stared at the stone tablet emitting pink light. That's right, in the light of the stone tablet, there is not only Musian's own aura, but also Bairuoxi's aura mixed in it. Lan Mulian narrowed her eyes slightly and stared at the test tablet silently. This is interesting. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 83. Huayan Tea House is located near Yangfeng Inn and is also close to the martial arts arena. At this moment, a middle-aged man in a luxurious robe is sitting in front of a clean and elegant pavilion outside the tea house, stroking his beard and looking at the high platform below. Beside him is the acting patriarch of the Gongsun family, Gongsun Ping. To be precise, it is the puppet patriarch pushed to the surface by Gongsun Xiong. Not far from Gongsun Ping is the crude warrior, the patriarch of the Bai family, Bai Fu. In addition, there are patriarchs or elders of nearly 10 families in Tianqian City. After all, this is a sect assessment that takes place every few years, especially this year their descendants are also participating in the test, and all families are naturally very concerned about this matter. This nephew Mu is really interesting. Others either have black luck or ordinary luck, but he is so good that he actually tests pink light. Mr. Huang took a sip of the teacup and suddenly laughed. I have been traveling for many years, and even those with great luck have seen it several times, but I have never heard of this pink light before. The third elder of the Ye family stroked his beard and looked down at the high platform below, with a bit of confusion in his eyes. Father Bai did not speak, but stared at the pink light on the stone tablet with doubt. How could there be my daughter's spiritual energy in this light? It was obviously Musian who was testing the stone tablet, but he could feel Bairuoxi's spiritual energy from the stone tablet tested by Musian. This is a bit wrong. Even if they really practiced dual cultivation, they should not leave spiritual energy in Musian's body. It seems that today's topic may be occupied by the eldest young master of the Mu family. An old man couldn't help shaking his head and laughing. I thought the test results of Yayu and Yalingxian were already quite explosive news, but I never thought that Musian's test results were even more jaw-dropping. I'm afraid it may not be. Mr. Huang had a different opinion, with a meaningful smile on his face. Have you forgotten Miss Wei from the Mu family and the genius girl from the Bai family? These two people are both in the soul refining realm. Wei Mengru is so low-key that people almost subconsciously ignore her existence, but Mr. Huang is deeply impressed by this girl. Firstly, she is almost always by Musian's side, and secondly, she has reached the soul refining realm at this age, which can be said to be a genius among geniuses. Even if Bai Ruoxi and Wei Mengru are not mentioned, there is still a more explosive thing brewing. Bai Ruoxi has a demon spirit, which the four major forces in Tianqian City all know. If someone wants to make trouble after the end of the martial arts arena, this occasion is the most appropriate time. This test is probably just an appetizer before the show starts. At this moment, Musian is looking up at the stone tablet emitting pink light, and falls into a brief contemplation. This is a bit embarrassing. Why is there pink luck? He subconsciously looked at Lan Murian, hoping that the senior sister could give him an answer. However, when he turned his head, he found that Lan Murian's eyes were as cold as a pond, and her cold eyes stared at him silently. The senior sister's eyes were a little strange. Musian said, "Senior sister, what's the situation?" Lan Murian said lightly, "It's not clear yet. It seems that your luck is a little different from others. I need to wait until I return to the sect to ask the master. Even this sex tester doesn't know." The cultivators in the audience were all shocked when they heard this, and their eyes looking at Musian also became a little more strange. One of the bad habits of people is that when they see others living worse than themselves, they will feel more or less psychologically comforted. Previously, when they saw Musian taking the test monument was motionless, and many of them were a little gloating. However, seeing the test monument light up with a pink light different from any time before, many people felt a little subtle. At this time, a young man in the audience suddenly asked loudly, "Senior sister, I wonder how to decide the rating of Musian." Many people looked sideways. It was the third young master of the Sun family who was selected as the disciple for the assessment. His talent also surpassed his peers, and he was also one of the rare geniuses. This test can be said to be a test. According to the test results, Lan Murian will rank these disciples who went up the mountain to participate in the assessment in a comprehensive order from the first to the last. At the moment, Musian's pink luck is really difficult to judge. Lan Murian glanced at him and said calmly, "I have my own criteria for judging." Yayu suddenly said, "Master Mu is only at the 4th level of Qi training, and this luck is unheard of. I am still very curious about what decision my senior sister will make. If Master Mu is placed before us, it will inevitably make people feel dissatisfied." Musian sneered, "Then how about you be the person who will assess the sect?" Yayu smiled slightly, "I am not very talented and knowledgeable, and I am not qualified to be the person who will assess the section." "Since you have a plan in mind, just shut up," Musian said. Lan Murian couldn't help but chuckle, but quickly restrained it, maintaining a cold attitude. "I have my own choice in my heart on how to judge. If someone thinks it is unfair later, they can report to the head of the sect in the future." However, Lan Murian changed his tone and smiled, "Now how to decide should still be decided by me. The underlying meaning of this is probably, are you teaching me how to do things?" Yayu's face was ugly, but he couldn't find a reason to refute. Moreover, he didn't dare to get angry in front of Lan Murian, so he had to endure it. However, it didn't matter. Let Musian show off for a while, and the good show will be on in a while. Senior sister is so domineering. Musian clapped his hands like a seal in his heart, and said, "Senior sister, since the test is over, I will go down first." Lan Murian said and after Musian went down, his eyes fell directly on Wei Mengru in the shadow of the corner. "Miss Wei, it's your turn." People's eyes followed Lan Murian's direction and looked in turn. It was not until then that they remembered that among the disciples participating in the sect assessment this time, there was also Musian's personal maid. In those eyes, Wei Mengru landed in front of the high platform. She was tall and her long hair was scattered, slightly covering her eyes, making it difficult to see her face. But even so, it is not difficult to judge from her back and even her temperament that this is a rare beauty, even if she is dressed very casually now. Wei Mengru stretched out her palm and touched the black stone tablet. Refining God Realm, 5th grade. When Lan Murian's voice fell, the audience fell into a dead silence. Even Lan Murian looked at Wei Mengru twice more with some surprise. She knew that Wei Mengru was in the Refining God Realm, but because she had never fought with her, she did not know that the other party was actually a 5th grade of Refining God. Judging from her age, she is probably only 2 or 3 years older than Musian. A 5th grade of Refining God Realm would be treated as a guest of honor in some families. It is really a bit strange that Wei Mengru is so talented that she is willing to be a maid in someone else's family. Wei Mengru injected a ray of spiritual energy into the stone tablet. At this time, the black stone tablet suddenly surged with amazing black light, which rushed into the sky and enveloped the entire high platform in an instant. Bad luck. The crowd of onlookers in the audience all stepped back subconsciously, their faces all changed color. What a pity, being able to reach the soul refining realm at this age, the future is limitless, but I didn't expect that her luck would be so bad, someone in the crowd suddenly said with regret. With such bad luck, just being with her will make you unlucky, right? What did the people in the Mu mansion think, that they would let her protect the eldest young master of the Mu family? Being with people with good luck, your own luck will more or less improve. Similarly, if you are with someone who exudes bad luck all over his body, you are likely to be affected. Maybe the Mu family has some way to suppress Wei Mengru's bad luck, otherwise how dare they let her follow Musian? But even so, the risk is still very high, although this woman is top-notch in both appearance and strength. Wei Mengru listened to the whispers in the audience expressionlessly, without any fluctuation on her face, and just glanced at Musian inadvertently. Sensing Wei Mengru's cold eyes, Musian grinned and waved to her. Wei Mengru curled her lips in disdain, walked down the platform silently, and was about to hide in the shadows. However, at this time, Musian took the lead and grabbed Wei Mengru's wrist, which made her body stiff slightly. She turned her head to look at Musian and asked in a calm tone, "What are you doing? You have been standing for so long, sit down and rest for a while." Musian smiled. Wei Mengru said lightly, "No need, I am with you, maybe it will affect your luck. You have been with me for so long before and nothing happened, how could there be any problem now?" Musian shook his head. Seeing that Wei Mengru didn't say anything, Musian took out a handkerchief, wiped the chair beside him, and said, "Come on, Sister Mengru, you are welcome." Wei Mengru hesitated for a moment, and finally nodded gently and sat down next to Musian. At the same time, the voices that were just discussing in secret disappeared tacitly. Musian's action was actually to show that he was on Wei Mengru's side. Continuing to discuss Wei Mengru's affairs would only offend the eldest young master of the Mu family. Because of these few casual words and an action, Wei Mengru's affairs only caused a ripple and then quietly calmed down. No one continued to discuss the matter, but watched the test disciples who came on stage one after another, while secretly comparing with other geniuses in their hearts. The eldest lady of the Bai family is here. At this time, someone suddenly noticed that a stream of light like a star lit up in the distant sky. The stream of light came quickly, and Bai Ruoxi stepped on the flying sword and landed in front of the martial arts arena. Her jade feet stepped on a pair of snow-white embroidered shoes, and the spiritual energy under her feet spread quietly like ripples. She wore a white off-shoulder dress, and her undecorated straight long hair fell like a waterfall, slightly bent in front of her calves, and her cherry lips were slightly pursed. That dress, pure but mixed with a little charm, coupled with the cool and elegant temperament, is the easiest for men to admire. Hello, senior sister. Bairuoxi smiled and spoke politely. Lan Murian looked up at Bairuoxi and smiled lightly. You came just in time, you are the only one left. After testing Bairuoxi, the ranking of the disciples for this assessment can be decided. Bairuoxi's appearance also made the atmosphere in the audience completely hot. Whether in modern times or ancient times, beautiful women are a topic that people are keen to talk about. Especially a beauty like Bairuoxi who has both strength and beauty. In the past, one of the things that many people talked about after dinner in Tianqian City was how to rank the beauties in Tianqian City. And Bairuoxi has always been the first place and cannot be shaken. The only one who can barely compare with her in terms of appearance is Huang Manting from Chinexi Chamber of Commerce, but Huang Manting's figure is far inferior to Bairuoxi. Sister Ruoxi should be the first among her peers, right? Yeqian looked at the white-dressed beauty on the stage and suddenly whispered. Ye Lingxian pursed her lips and said softly, probably. If Bairuoxi's next luck test has a red light or even a golden light, it will probably confirm her identity as the first among her peers. She is beautiful and powerful, no wonder your brother Mu likes her so much. Huang Manting looked at the Yes sisters with a smile, trying to add fuel to the fire. Yeqian seemed unhappy and whispered, Sister Lingxian is just young. If she were the same age as Sister Ruoxi, her strength would not be lower than hers. Muzian smiled lightly and said, if Sister Qian'er works hard to practice, I believe you will catch up with her in the future. Yeqian shook her head gently and said, I can never compare to Sister Bai. Although she said so, her eyebrows were obviously relaxed. Looking at Yeqian's cute face that could hardly hide her little joy, Huang Manting secretly tisked. This Muzian really knows how to grasp the girl's mind. He even pretended to be a pure and beautiful boy to tease her before. Recalling the scene when Muzian first visited the Dan Chamber of Commerce that day, Huang Manting was furious. At this time, Lan Mulian's crisp and cold voice suddenly came from the stage. First level of refining spirit. And as her voice fell, a golden light fell from the sky. The dazzling light was much brighter than Ye Lingxian and Ye Yu, and it seemed to be wrapped with a faint colorful glow. Lan Mulian looked at the weak beauty who was touching the stone tablet with her palm and slightly closed her eyes, and the stone tablet emitting golden light, and was silent in her heart. It seems that Bairuoxi is undoubtedly the first among her peers. The cultivators under the stage also showed an expression of expectation. After all, the scene of Bairuoxi defeating Gongsun Cheng before was too impressive, and she was promoted to the refining god realm not long after that. It is not surprising that she is the first among her peers. Strong strength and the first beauty of Tianqian City, the blessing of these two identities made many people look at Bairuoxi with a little more admiration that was difficult to conceal. It's just a pity that Miss Bai seems to have a close relationship with the eldest young master of the Mu family. When thinking of this, many people felt a little regretful. Bairuoxi slowly opened her eyes and turned to look in the direction of Muzian. After the two looked at each other, a faint smile appeared on the girl's face. This subtle movement was also seen by Ye Yu in the audience. Recalling that no matter how he tried to please her in the past, he was always responded coldly. Seeing Bairuoxi's sweet smile when facing Muzian at this time, Ye Yu's imbalance in his heart finally made his jealousy burn uncontrollably, and he slowly stood up. Bairuoxi bowed politely in the direction of Lan Murian, and then planned to leave the stage. Wait a minute. At this time, an abrupt voice suddenly sounded in the audience, and everyone looked sideways. Ye Yu. Muzian was also a little surprised and looked at the handsome black-robed boy behind him. Do you have anything else to say? Lan Murian looked at Ye Yu in the audience and asked. Has senior sister determined the ranking of the disciples for this assessment? Ye Yu asked. Lan Murian nodded silently. The positions of the subsequent assessment disciples may need to be considered, but the candidate for the first place this time no longer needs to be considered. What if I say that there are demon cultivators among the disciples in this assessment? Yayu suddenly asked. In the stands not far away, many high-level cultivators from the families all showed a meaningful smile on their faces. Musian narrowed his eyes slightly, shook his head and chuckled secretly. It seems that someone still can't help it. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 84. Demon Cultivator? What Yayu just meant is that there are demon cultivators among us. Someone in the crowd reacted immediately, and their eyes immediately fell on Yayu. Master Ye, are you serious about this? Of course I take it seriously. Yayu nodded, looked around everyone, and his eyes stayed on Musian's face for a moment. At this moment, Musian's expression was a little dull, his eyes seemed surprised and annoyed, and he stared at him hatefully. Musian's fists clenched quietly at some point, and his eyes were filled with anger as he looked at him. You will also have today. Musian's reaction made Yayu feel extremely satisfied. He withdrew his gaze and immediately looked up at Lan Mulian. This aloof woman still looked cold and stared at him calmly. But just like this, it already gives people a great sense of satisfaction. After all, this senior sister Lan is the sex assessor this time, and coupled with her cold nature, this is probably the first time she has stared at a person of the opposite sex since she came to Tianqian City, right? Where is the demon cultivator you just mentioned? Lan Mulian's clear and cold voice sounded in the square, causing all the cultivators present to look at Yayu. The demon cultivator is among us. Yayu paused and continued, even you all know her. When he said this, he looked at Bairuoxi. However, her expression was still cold, and she looked at him expressionlessly. Such cold eyes deeply hurt Yayu's heart. Recalling Bairuoxi's charming smile in front of Musian and such a cold attitude when facing him, Yayu could no longer bear it and raised his head. He started to stare at Bairuoxi and said, Miss Bai, don't you have anything to say? These words were like a bomb dropped into the water. The next moment, the entire competition stage exploded. Bairuoxi is a demon cultivator. How is it possible? Yayu is crazy. This is the first thought that pops up in everyone's mind. Huang Manting's eyes flashed slightly, and she stared at the cold-looking Bairuoxi with suspicion, and couldn't help but take a closer look at Yayu. If Yayu wasn't crazy, there might be evidence to prove Bairuoxi's identity as a demon cultivator. But if this is the case, what should Musian, who has always been close to Bairuoxi, do? I'm afraid this senior sister Lan will also investigate the Mu family, right? When Huang Manting thought of this, she first sympathized with Musian, and then she felt something was not right in her heart. The words she talked with her father at the Don Chamber of Commerce yesterday suddenly came to her mind. Huang Manting was suddenly stunned for a moment, as if she had thought of some possibility. When she raised her head again and looked at Musian with a worried and fearful expression, her eyes were a little more fearful. If he really even thought of this step, it would be too scary. Yayu, do you have any evidence to prove this? Someone in the crowd suddenly asked. Yayu sneered and said, if there is no evidence, would I dare to mention this matter in public and slander others? Musian frowned slightly and said, Yayu, you have to think carefully. At this time, you still want to threaten me? Yayu ignored Musian's advice and turned to look at the tea house pavilion behind him. In front of the pavilion, all the senior officials of Tianqian City's families gathered here, and they were all looking at the audience at this moment. Yayu Lang said loudly, since the clan heads and elders of all major families are here today, how about asking everyone to be witnesses to verify whether what I said is true or false? When he said this, he looked at Lan Mulian again and said, Senior sister, please keep an eye on Musian and Bairuoxi and ask them to follow me to the tea house's pavilion. I have my own way to verify it, find out whether what I said is true or false. Lan Mulian glanced at Musian, his eyes stayed on Bairuoxi for a moment, and nodded slightly, okay. Yayu cupped his hands towards everyone and said, "Please wait here for a while. After a while, the major families will confirm for you whether what I said is true. If you want to get rid of Musian, this is the best opportunity. Because people from all major families are present today. The Gongsun family has a feud with the Mu family, and the Chenexai Chamber of Commerce has always remained neutral. Some other families have trade relations with the Mu family, but some families have also been suppressed by the Mu family. If the Mu family can be investigated by the Lianji sect because of the demon cultivator, they can also take advantage of the opportunity." Ye Qian subconsciously grabbed the corner of Ye Lingxuan's clothes, looked at Musian nervously, and said anxiously, "Sister." Ye Lingxian frowned slightly, and although her expression was calm, she could not hide the worry in her eyes. If Bairuoxi is really a demon cultivator as Yayu said, then Musian, who had close contact with her during this period, will also be investigated. When encountering such a thing when the sect examination is coming, this is very bad news. Lan Mulian led a few people to the tea house. When Musian passed by the Yes sisters, he paused slightly and looked sideways at the two of them. Realizing that they were all looking at him, Musian showed a helpless smile and said softly, "Originally, I was looking forward to the fact that after the sect examination was over, we would be real brothers and sisters. I never thought we would meet each other. This kind of thing." He raised his head slightly, looked at the sky at an angle of 45 degrees, sighed softly, turned his head to look at Ye Lingxian, stared into her eyes, and said through the voice, "If I can't get out of trouble today, I hope that when you see that snow lotus in the future, you will remember that when you were in Tianqian City, there was a brother named Mu who secretly admired you." Ye Lingxian frowned and looked at Musian with complicated eyes. She had always been a little wary of Musian's goodwill, but today, seeing his true feelings, even the most frozen heart couldn't help but be moved. Musian then looked at Ye Qian and said softly, "If I'm not here in the future, stay with your sister Lingxian. I'll be relieved if she takes care of you." "Brother Mu." Ye Qian's eyes were filled with tears. She wanted to speak to keep him, but she knew that this occasion was not appropriate at all, so she could only shout his name with sobs. Musian walked into the tea house without looking back. At this time, a voice suddenly sounded in his mind, "If you are in trouble, release your spiritual energy, and I will let someone take you away." Ye Lingxuan's voice. Musian did not slow down his pace, and walked into the courtyard of the tea house with several people. Now there were a group of high-level officials from Tianqian City who were ready to watch the show. Musian walked up the stairs, looked up at Yayu who was walking in front, and glanced at Bairuoxi who was not far from him. She pursed her lips tightly, and although she kept a calm expression, there was still some worry in her eyes. If Yayu really had a way to detect the demon spirit in her body, in front of so many people, would there really be a way to reverse the situation? Even if she believed in Musian, Bairuoxi couldn't help but feel a little worried. If he was implicated because of this matter. Musian secretly glanced at Lan Murian who was walking not far ahead, and when she was not paying attention, he quietly reached out and held Bairuoxi's slightly cool and slender soft little hand, and comforted her in a voice transmission, "Don't worry, Ruoxi." He had said before that everything would be left to him. He kept his word. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 85. Tea house, in front of the pavilion. Everyone put their hands behind their backs and looked at Yayu and others who were walking slowly from the stairs. Looking at Musian behind Yayu again, he looked calm. He was no longer as flustered as he was in front of the competition stage just now, and there was no expression on his face. When they saw Lan Mulian, the elders of these big families and even the clan leader bowed their hands towards her. Lan Mulian nodded slightly, then turned to look at the three people behind him. His eyes swept over Bairuoxi's body inadvertently, and then looked past Musian and fell on Yayu. A clear and cold voice with rich texture said, Yayu, how do you want to confirm what you just said? The elders of the Ye family looked at Yayu's figure and frowned inadvertently, obviously extremely dissatisfied with Yayu's attack just now. The Ye family is no better than the Mu family. If it is really confirmed that Bairuoxi is a demon cultivator, it would be okay. But if Bairuoxi's identity as a demon cultivator is not proven in the end, the Ye family may be severely blackmailed by the Mu family afterwards. No, just a small amount of blackmail is probably enough. If Musian is cruel, it won't just be as simple as extorting a sum of money. Yayu, all the major families in Tianqian City are present today. You must act with caution, the elder of the Ye family reminded, intentionally or unintentionally. Musian is not on good terms with all these small families. After all, there are only 4 major forces that can truly dominate Tianqian City, and the Mu family holds the largest share. As long as the 4 major forces stand on one side, even a fool should know how to stand on the side. Yayu cupped his hands and said respectfully, Elder, of course I dare to expose this matter in public only if I have evidence. It is our duty to eliminate demons and protect the Tao. If we really allow the demon cultivator to enter the Lianji sect in the future, I am afraid it will cause a catastrophe. After he finished speaking, he turned to look at Musian behind him and took out a small box. From the small box, he took out a pill with a dark luster. Empty pill. The alchemist from Chenexai Chamber of Commerce recognized the elixir in Yayu's hand and his eyes narrowed slightly. The prescription of this empty elixir is quite rare. For those who take this elixir, the spiritual energy in the cauldron will be purified, and all the mixed spiritual energy will be discharged from the cauldron. To put it bluntly, the real function of this empty pill is for those monks who practice meditation and absorb a lot of mixed spiritual energy. This Yayu is smart. If Bairuoxi is a demon cultivator, the demon energy in her body will be expelled from the cauldron as soon as possible. The acting patriarch of the Gongsun family narrowed his eyes and stared at the pill in Yayu's hand. The master told me before he came here that today he should talk less, do less things, and just be a bystander. To put it bluntly, the meaning of this was to tell him not to interfere and first see if Yayu could confirm that Bairuoxi was the demon cultivator. If it is confirmed that Lan Mulian attacks the Mu family at this time, then the Gongsun family, even if they want to help, will be powerless. At that time, we can take advantage of this opportunity to secretly gain some benefits, and even get back the 3 squares that were swallowed up before. If Yayu was unable to confirm the matter, the Gongsun family would jump in to do a favor and stand on the side of Musian and Bairuoxi to question Yayu. To put it bluntly, the Gongsun family just wants to be on the sidelines. They don't want to offend either party, but they want to reap the benefits of both parties. Yayu handed the elixir in his hand to the only alchemist present and said, Senior Wan, you are a highly respected alchemist. If I hand over the elixir to you, everyone can rest assured. You can check first to see if there has been any tampering with the Kongwu Dan refined by this junior. This would be fairer. Yayu glanced at Musian casually and said, save some people from saying that I tampered with the elixir later. Wan Lao nodded slightly and raised his hand to take the empty pill. The elixir floated in his palm, and ripples swept across the surface of the elixir. After a while, Wan Lao slowly opened his eyes, looked at Lan Mulian, and said, there is nothing wrong with this elixir. Lan Mulian raised her eyebrows slightly and glanced at Musian casually. Musian nodded slightly, looked at Bairuoxi, and said, since there is nothing wrong with the elixir, just take it. It is quite troublesome to refine this empty elixir. Such a precious thing is given away for free. If we don't take it, wouldn't we be sorry for Master Yes' hard work? Bairuoxi's palms hidden in her sleeves clenched subconsciously. If this Kongwu pill is true as the rumors say, as long as it is taken, the demonic energy will overflow from the body, then in front of so many people, I am afraid that even Musian will not be able to reverse the situation. But with so many people watching now, if you don't take this pill, Wouldn't you be guilty of committing a crime? Now Bairuoxi is in a dilemma. Yao's sneak attack this time was really ruthless. Young man from the Ye family, if this proves that my daughter is fine, just wait for me. Father Bai stared at Yao with a gloomy face. Yao said respectfully, Uncle, please be patient. If Miss Bai is confirmed to be a demon cultivator, then I'm afraid my uncle will need to investigate. After all, Bairuoxi is Father Bai's biological daughter. If Bairuoxi is a demon cultivator, then Father Bai and even Bai Yuanfeng may suffer in the future. What's more, didn't I specially refine this empty elixir to prove the truth of this matter? After that, Yao turned his head to look at Bairuoxi and gestured, Miss Bai, please. Bairuoxi stared at Yao and was silent for a long time. She raised her hand slightly and took the empty pill floating in the air. After about a cup of tea, Lan Murian's eyes moved slightly, and suddenly caught a wisp of pink smoke floating quietly in the air. Demon spirit. A wisp of pink demon spirit overflowed from Bairuoxi's body. This scene made everyone present change color, and Bai's father's face was terribly gloomy, staring at Yao. Yao couldn't help but smile with a sure victory on his face. He had repeatedly asked his teacher before, and spent a lot of money to find the medicinal materials for the empty pill, and took great pains to refine this valuable empty pill. If he was not sure, how could he reveal it in this occasion? Miss Bai, it seems that my judgment is correct. Yao looked at Bairuoxi, whose lips had lost their color, and spoke slowly. Her white face was less bloody and more pale, making the already weak and cold girl look even more sickly. It's really a demonic aura. Gong Soon Ping stared at the weak beauty, seeming a little unbelievable. Mr. Huang narrowed his eyes slightly. Even though he had heard about this from the guest of the Chamber of Commerce before, he was still a little surprised when he really saw this scene. You have surrounded and suppressed a demon cultivator before. Now think about it, will the demon cultivator have more than one companion? Yao spoke again. Bairuoxi suddenly raised her head, stared at Yao, and said coldly, I have never cooperated with any demon cultivator in private. This kind of thing is not up to you alone, Miss Bai. Yao looked at Lan Mulian and said, Senior sister, how do you think this matter should be judged? Lan Mulian ignored him, her eyes fell on Bairuoxi as if nothing had happened, and was about to speak. At this time, Musian seemed to have been unable to hold back his laughter, and suddenly chuckled. What are you still pretending at this time? Yao stared at Musian, with a dark face. Master Mu, you have a close relationship with the demon cultivator in private, and this matter may also be related to you. Musian pointed to the pink smoke that had already drifted in the air, shook his head and smiled, Master Ye, do you think this is demonic energy? What else? I think this is spiritual energy. Musian looked at the pink smoke drifting in the air and said seriously. You are talking nonsense, Yao said angrily. Musian asked back, isn't the luck I just tested also pink? Am I also a demon cultivator? Yao frowned. This guy was clearly making a fuss, but he didn't know how to refute him. Musian looked up at Lan Mulian and said, Sister, can you take out the test tablet again? Lan Mulian nodded silently, took out the test tablet that was only the size of a palm, and gently threw it on the ground. The black stone tablet then quietly enlarged. Musian stretched out his palm and touched the test tablet. At this moment, the test tablet once again emitted a faint pink light. Musian bathed in the pink light, turned his head to look at Lan Mulian, and said, Sister, if the identity of a demon cultivator can be confirmed by color alone, then am I not also a demon cultivator? I know that the Lianji sex Qi-seeing technique is one of the best. Senior sister can test my identity, Musian continued. Noticing that everyone's eyes were all looking at her, Lan Murian picked up a talisman and burned it. A faint golden light appeared in her clear eyes, and she swept her eyes calmly over Musian. At that moment, everyone seemed to be able to see the faint white light emanating from Musian's body. That was the aura of a human cultivator. He is not a demon. Lan Murian finally came to a conclusion. Musian smiled and said, since I am not a demon but I am emitting pink luck, why must the pink smoke that Miss Bai just emitted be demonic energy? Musian turned his head to look at the clan leaders and elders behind him, and humbly asked. I believe that you are all fair and just people, full of righteousness. Do you think the pink smoke in Bairuoxi's body is demonic energy or aura? The acting clan leader of the Gongsun family raised his eyelids slightly and glanced at Lan Murian, who looked cold but never spoke. His eyes flickered, and he immediately stroked his beard and smiled, no matter how I look at it, it looks like ordinary spiritual energy. Indeed, I have heard in the past that some cultivators have special physiques, and the spiritual energy in their bodies is different from others, so they are occasionally mistaken for demon cultivators, but in fact they are just human cultivators. Indeed, this is spiritual energy. Mr. Huang smiled and nodded. Yes, it is spiritual energy. How could Miss Bai be a demon cultivator? She is the pride of our Tianqian city. Next, people spoke up one after another, all of whom believed that this was spiritual energy rather than demon energy. Bairuoxi looked at the scene in astonishment. Even she did not expect that the situation would be reversed so easily. Musian turned his head to look at Yeyu, who had an ugly face, and asked word by word, Master Ye, I want to ask you again. Do you think this is spiritual energy or demon energy now? You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 86. Musian's voice rang out clearly in the attic, and Yeyu fell into silence. The pink mist in Miss Bairuoxi's body is just a special spiritual energy, not a demonic energy. Musian spoke again, although it looks like a demonic energy, it is actually different from a demonic energy. Master Ye, what do you think? He looked at Yeyu calmly. Ever since Musian went to see Lan Murian and heard the answer he wanted from her, it was no longer so important whether Bairuoxi was a demon cultivator. When everyone thought she was not a demon cultivator, then she was not. This matter actually had something to do with Bairuoxi's talent. She was a rare genius in a century, and even the Lianji sect had to pay attention to her. Moreover, Lan Murian was not the kind of pedantic person who stuck to the rules. With Bairuoxi's current achievements and even such great fortune, as long as she did not do anything that would harm Dongzhou in the future, even if the Lianji sect knew that she had a trace of demonic energy in her body, they would still protect her. As for the Bai family, Lianji sect may secretly investigate after this, but as long as it is confirmed that the Bai family has no secret relationship with the demon cultivators of Bizhu, they will be safe. And all this is caused by Bairuoxi's talent and the relationship between Musian and Lan Murian. Of course, if the high-level officials of Tianqian City use the fact that Bairuoxi is a demon cultivator to make trouble, Lianji sect will not be justified no matter how strong it is, so it will have to find a legitimate reason to protect Bairuoxi at that time. However, with the status and position of the Mu family in Tianqian City, as long as Musian opens this mouth, the high-level officials of Tianqian City will give a favor. No one will go against the current in this situation. Now this matter has become a general trend. Some of the family elders and clan leaders present know that Bairuoxi is a demon cultivator, and some do not know. But now, those who know will pretend to be confused. Those who pretend to be confused are geniuses, and those who want to retaliate against Bairuoxi are fools. As it happens, there is such a fool who thinks that he is the only one who has discovered Bairuoxi's secret. Little did he know that many of the cultivators present had already noticed this. Yeyu stared at Musian and said coldly, "Have you already calculated this step?" Musian shook his head gently and said seriously, "Master Ye, I don't understand what you are saying." I am just an honest man who was framed and now wants to appeal in court to prove that I and Bairuoxi are innocent. Yayu said in a deep voice, even if everyone here stands on your side and enters the sect, I can still tell the headmaster. Musian shook his head and chuckled secretly. Yayu still hasn't figured out the situation. Even if he reports it to Lianji sect, it's useless. Bairuoxi's talent has determined that she will not be punished. If it was before, Musian would still be a little unsure. But Lan Murian had said before that her master, the leader of Lianji sect, had said, rules are dead, but people are alive, which meant that the leader was not a stickler for convention. The demonic aura in Bairuoxi's cauldron meant that she was a half-demon, or, to put it more cutely, a fox-eared girl. There was a life and death feud between cultivators and demon cultivators, but there were exceptions occasionally. Bairuoxi was the exception. Her talent, coupled with Lan Murian's judgment, was enough for Lianji sect to let her off. Musian sighed and said helplessly, Master, yeah, you kept saying that Bairuoxi was a demon cultivator at the beginning. We didn't want to argue with you because we believe that justice is in the hearts of the people, and we also believe that Senior Sister Lan will give us an explanation. Then you used a Kongguya pill to prove Bairuoxi's identity as a demon cultivator, but it still didn't work. Now everyone including Senior Sister Lan has confirmed that Miss Bairuoxi is not a demon cultivator, but you still doubt her. Musian said coldly, are you questioning the judgment of everyone present? This sentence hit Yayu's head like a heavy hammer, making his face lose color. But he quickly reacted, sneered, and said, Musian, you can do whatever you want in Tianqian City, but when you enter Lianji sect, can you still cover the sky with one hand like today? I cover the sky with one hand, Musian repeated, and asked back, so, you mean that I colluded with my senior sister in private and protected the demon cultivator? Just because of your one-sided words, you threw such a big basin of dirty water on us? Aren't you bullying an honest person? Yayu sneered, don't pretend, Musian, whether Bairuoxi is a demon cultivator or not, you know it better than anyone else. I know clearly in my heart that Miss Bai is a very intelligent and weak woman, not a demon cultivator. Musian smiled. Musian suddenly changed the subject and said, also, why does Master Ye think that what you said is correct? What others say is wrong? He raised his hand and pointed at Yayu, saying, then can I also say that the demon cultivator is not Bairuoxi, but you? Being framed for no reason, Yayu's eyes were full of anger, and he said angrily, Musian, don't slander me. You say Bairuoxi is a demon cultivator, it's okay. Why can't others say you are a demon cultivator? Musian asked back. He is good at playing double standards. I say others, it's okay, but others say me, it's not okay. Our Yayu is really great. Who are you sending? Yayu said in a deep voice, Musian, don't be so messy. What Bairuoxi just exuded from her body was clearly a wisp of evil spirit. Everyone present can see it clearly. Miss Bai's body is filled with spiritual energy. Do you think your vision can match that of Senior Sister Lan, as well as the elders and clan heads of these families present? When Musian said this, he clasped his fists towards Lan Mulian, assumed the posture of a junior, and said respectfully, Senior Sister, I now also suspect that Yayu is a demon cultivator. I would like to trouble you, Senior Sister, to use the chi-gazing technique to find out. Let's see if there is anything suspicious hidden in Yayu's body. Yayu straightened his back and was not afraid. He walked and sat upright. Since he was not a demon cultivator, why was he afraid that a chi-gazing technique would fail? At this time, an old voice slowly sounded from Yayu's body. Give up, Bairuoxi is indeed not a demon cultivator. As the voice fell, Yayu's body stiffened slightly, and he growled in his heart, Teacher, what came out of Bairuoxi's body just now was clearly demonic energy, why did you also? Can't you see it yet? Even if you confirm that Bairuoxi is a demon cultivator, she will not be a demon cultivator. It sounds contradictory, but that's what happened at the moment. Even if Yayu was even possessed by the old man in his body and racked his brains to prove that Bairuoxi was a demon cultivator, she still would not be a demon cultivator. Of course, being a lone ranger is comfortable, but in this fairy world, there is not only fighting and killing, but also worldly relationships. Musian, as for Musian, has obviously mastered the sophistication of human nature. You can't reveal your identity as a teacher yet. Just bear with it. The old man's voice slowly sounded in Yayu's heart again. He has too many enemies. If his identity is exposed now, he may be in big trouble if word spreads. Yayu stared at Musian with a look of reluctance in his eyes. After a long time, he spoke slowly with an extremely humiliating and unwilling voice. Bairuoxi is not a demon cultivator. I misunderstood. With these words, the outcome of this matter was announced. And Musian did not take this opportunity to continue to attack. It's not that he is kind-hearted, but Lan Mulian is also present. This senior sister has already given him enough face, and Yayu is also a disciple of this assessment. If he continues to be embarrassed, it will inevitably make it difficult for her. What's more, what Yayu did today was not completely free of charge. The person who will ultimately bear responsibility for this will be the Ye family behind him. Musian turned his head and looked at the elder of the Ye family not far away, cupped his hands and said, Senior, Master Ye is young and energetic and ignorant, but I still hope that I can teach him more in the future. The elder of the Ye family looked at Musian in surprise, then raised his hands and said solemnly, My Ye family will definitely give an explanation to young Master Mu and Miss Bai about this matter. When he said this, the elders of the Ye family glared at Yayu. Musian did not take the opportunity to attack the Ye family, he had already given the Ye family face. If the Mu family is offended because of this matter, then the Ye family may not be too happy in the future. This time, in order to ease the relationship with the Mu family, the Ye family may have to spend a lot of financial and material resources in the future. Although the elders of the Ye family didn't know it clearly, Musian didn't care about the money. After all, he had already secretly taken away the real treasure of the Ye family. Ye Lingxian will stay in the Ye family probably because of the treasure, that is, the Qi of heaven. It's just that the people behind Ye Lingxian probably didn't expect that in the end, they didn't get the Qi of heaven, but instead got their own daughter involved. A farce ended here. The elders of the Ye family were embarrassed to stay at the scene because of this incident. He left the tea house with Yayu, who seemed to be a little autistic, and went outside to explain refuting the rumors to the people and monks who were still waiting for the final news. Elder Ye's face looked gloomy and terrifying. It wasn't that he was angry with Musian, but that he was angry with Yayu. Because of Yayu's move, the Ye family's economy may be affected for a long time in the future. Other forces will more or less avoid a family that is at odds with the Mu family. Bairuoxi raised her eyes slightly and looked at Musian's bright eyes. She didn't expect that he could turn the situation around so easily. At first, when she saw Yayu taking out the pill, she even thought that her identity as a demon cultivator was about to be exposed. In the end, her identity was exposed, but no one thought she was a demon cultivator. The person who led the result to this point was Musian. Mu Lang, thank you, Bairuoxi said through the message. Musian turned his head to look at her, shook his head slightly, and said through a message, as long as you're okay. Because Lan Mulian was also present, Musian did not dare to look at Bairuoxi affectionately. He turned to look at Lan Mulian and said respectfully, Senior Sister Lan is very aware of everything. Today's matter is really troublesome for you. Lan Mulian didn't speak, just looked silently at the dark test monument in front of him and the pink light that had gradually faded away. That was Musian's luck. Bairuoxi's matter has been resolved, but now, there is still one matter about Bairuoxi that has not been resolved. Lan Mulian tilted his head slightly, his pupils suddenly became much colder, and he said expressionlessly, "I have something else to ask you." Musian smiled and nodded, and replied via voice transmission, "Sister, please tell me. Why is there Biruoxi's spiritual energy in your cauldron?" The indifferent smile on Musian's face faltered slightly. This involves my blind spot of knowledge. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article feed, placement, below article feed, target. Type, mix. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 87. I have Biruoxi's spiritual energy in my body? When hearing Lan Murian's friendly question, Musian was obviously stunned. As the saying goes, those who are involved are confused, while those who are watching can see clearly. If Lan Murian hadn't mentioned this, he might not have realized that there was Biruoxi's spiritual energy in his cauldron. Could it be that during the previous dual cultivation? But the characteristic of the natural cauldron is active output rather than passive intake. In other words, it should be my spiritual energy that was given to Biruoxi, not Biruoxi's spiritual energy in my body. Musian fell into thought. As the elders and clan leaders of the major families left, Musian came back to his senses and subconsciously glanced at Lan Murian. Her pair of cold and bright eyes stared at Musian, expressing a sincere confusion and puzzlement, and put on a humbly asking listening appearance. But this look like a cold pond made Musian feel a full sense of oppression. He pondered for a moment, then transmitted his voice, "To be honest, senior sister, my physique is quite special. This time, I spent a little effort to cover up Biruoxi's evil spirit." Lan Murian raised her eyebrows slightly, smiling, "How do you cover it up?" "I am a natural furnace tripod," Musian said. Natural furnace tripod. Lan Murian repeated it in her mind, and suddenly remembered the books she had seen in the library. She frowned slightly and said, "If I remember correctly, the effect of the natural furnace tripod is given unilaterally, and it still doesn't make sense why you have Biruoxi's spiritual energy in your body. I am also confused about this. If you don't mind, I would like to ask senior sister to help me confirm whether there is anything wrong with my natural furnace tripod," Musian replied, showing the respect of a junior brother to a senior sister. Lan Murian nodded, "Okay." She was indeed a little concerned about Tianchen Luding's physique. In this world, there are all kinds of people with special physiques, and most of them are selfish. But Musian's physique is beneficial to others. He cannot use the spiritual energy in Tianchen Luding himself, but he can provide corresponding spiritual energy for other opposite sexes. If that person is in a bottleneck period, he may be able to break through the bottleneck directly with the spiritual energy. It can be said that Musian does not have a golden finger, but he himself is a golden finger. Lan Murian collected her thoughts, turned to look at Biruoxi, and said, "After leaving the tea house, I will prove for you that the matter of demon cultivation is Yayu's wrong judgment. As for the follow-up matters." She paused, looked at Musian, and said, "I will leave it to you to deal with it." She is not good at dealing with these trivial matters of communicating with people, but Musian is very good at these things. "Thank you for your help this time," senior sister Biruoxi thanked her sincerely. Lan Murian nodded slightly. Because of Yayu's sudden attack, Lan Murian was not in the mood to stay here and chat. After briefly explaining these things, she left the tea house. After Lan Murian left, Biruoxi turned her head to look at Musian and said in a gentle voice with texture, "Mu Lang, I'm really sorry for causing you a lot of trouble this time." Musian shook his head slowly, stared at her, and said, "For you, everything is worth it." Biruoxi smiled reservedly and said softly, "Mu Lang is here again. You have said this to other girls, right?" The love lock fell gently on Musian's wrist without knowing when. Musian pretended not to notice, stared at by Ruoxi, and said softly, Ruoxi, at this moment, I only like you. The hard look conveyed Musian's current mood, and he was indeed not lying. By Ruoxi's peach blossom eyes flashed with water, and she stared at Musian silently, as if she was a little crazy. Musian took the opportunity to continue, Ruoxi, you should go back to the Mu mansion first. I still have to deal with the outside world. By Ruoxi asked puzzledly, didn't senior sister Lan go out to explain? Musian shook his head and smiled, Yayu's dirty water has been poured out. After this, even if senior sister, or even the high-level officials of the major families in Tianqian City prove that you are not a demon cultivator, people will still gossip, and even suspect whether we have colluded secretly long ago. Although they did collude. Bai Ruoxi frowned slightly and said softly, they don't believe the major families in Tianqian City, don't they even believe the people who are assessing the sect? Of course, Musian said, as a matter of course, people only believe what they see with their own eyes. In the final analysis, what they care about is not whether you are a demon cultivator or not, but they just want to add some spice to their boring lives. Even if others have proved that I am just a cultivator, there will still be people who suspect that I am a demon cultivator. Bai Ruoxi frowned. Yes. Musian nodded, staring at her beautiful profile, and continued, but it's okay to doubt it. Everyone wants spice, so I'll give them some spice. For the sake of Ye Lingxian and Ye Qian, he didn't intend to make things too difficult for the Ye family. However, Ye Yu seemed to be a little too idle, so idle that he could cause trouble to him every now and then. Although it was not a big deal, it would be a bit annoying to be repeatedly harassed by flies. We have to keep Ye Yu busy in the future. Ye mansion. Ye Yu sat cross-legged quietly at the head of the bed, seemingly calm, but in fact, when he closed his eyes, he would think of the scene in front of the tea house before. Are you dissatisfied? An old voice sounded slowly in his body, and Ye Yu slowly opened his eyes. Teacher, why didn't you let me reveal Bai Ruoxi's true identity at that time? Ye Yu replied in a low voice. Since senior sister Lan can use the Qi watching technique, if senior sister is allowed to use the Qi watching technique on Bai Ruoxi on that occasion, no matter how much Musian quibbles, the matter will be implemented, right? The old man sighed softly, if the sect examiner is determined to keep Bai Ruoxi alive, even if she sees the demonic energy in Bai Ruoxi's body with her Qi gazing technique, do you think she will answer truthfully? Ye Yu fell silent. You are too impulsive, the old man continued. In the past, when Ye Yu's talent returned, he endured it for a long time and practiced hard. The old man once thought that Ye Yu's character must be good. After all, with such endurance, his future achievements are destined to be high. However, since meeting Musian, Ye Yu seems to be becoming more and more impulsive. Musian seemed to have become Ye Yu's inner demon. Every time he saw him, Ye Yu would lose his mind. It's no wonder, after all, Ye Yu's several encounters so far have ended in defeat. He fell from a genius to a waste, then became an admired genius again, and then his psychological defenses were broken down by Musian again and again. Thanks to Ye Yu's good mentality, a normal person would probably be autistic by now. In any case, your goal has been achieved. Only a mature adult can give up when things are good, the old man spoke slowly. Ye Yu frowned and whispered, just now, the elder went outside the tea house to refute the rumor personally. How have I achieved my goal? The old man replied with a smile, just refuting the rumors is not enough. From the time you said Bai Ruoxi was a demon cultivator, everything Musian did after that could not change the final result. No matter how hard they try to prove that Bai Ruoxi is not a demon cultivator, there will still be people who doubt her. After Ye Yu was stunned for a long time, he muttered to himself, so, I won this time. That's true, the old man replied slowly, although the Ye family will pay a high price for this, you did win this time. Musian is an extremely arrogant person, and he can't even help the girl he likes. Protected, it will make him very upset. So what you have to do next is not to cause trouble for Musian, but to concentrate on your cultivation. The underlying meaning of the statement is, stop causing trouble and focus on your cultivation. Yayu nodded slightly, his eyes that were originally full of anger gradually calmed down, and he felt that his originally depressed mood was much relieved, and he said, I will practice hard, and then defeat Musian openly in the sect examination. The old man said yeah lightly, but sighed quietly in his heart. Because of Musian's matter, he didn't even dare to sleep peacefully during this period, for fear that Yayu would accidentally fall into Musian's scheme. If he hadn't spoken in time to stop Yayu today, the things he had hidden in Yayu's body might have been exposed. If it gets to that point, I'm afraid many enemies will come looking for him without Musian taking action. It seems that we have to speed up the progress and make Yayu reach the God-refining realm as soon as possible at all costs. In front of the competition stage, the crowd here had gathered unknowingly. Just now, the elders of the Ye family brought Yayu out to explain the matter, which also proved that Bairuoxi was not a demon cultivator. Lan Mulian, who came out later, also spoke to confirm that what the elders of the Ye family said was true. However, as Musian guessed, human beings are very fond of eating melons. Many of them still remain skeptical and want to see the person involved speak out in person. But even if Musian or even Bairuoxi personally proves it, it's useless. The moment the dirty water is spilled, it can no longer be taken back. What are Master Mu and Miss Bai doing in the tea house? The assessor and the senior officials of the major families have already left one after another. Why are they still in there and not coming out? Someone suddenly couldn't help but ask. Could it be that you are cleaning up the clues at the scene and hiding some truth? It shouldn't be the case. If those families in Tianqian City can't be trusted, can't they even trust the sect examiner? No matter how powerful the Mu family is, can they still bribe that fairy? That's not certain. The man immediately closed his mouth when he said this. It is very dangerous to question the disciples of the Liangyi sect in public. Ya Lingxian frowned inadvertently as she listened to these talking voices. These people are so annoying. They have already confirmed that Sister Ruoxi is not a demon cultivator, and yet they are still discussing it. Yechian muttered softly. Yayu's dirty water has been poured out. No matter what he does, there will always be people discussing it. There is nothing we can do about it, Ya Lingxian said softly. But don't worry, they can only talk gossip at most. In 2 days when the sex assessment begins, this matter will be revealed. This time it seemed that Musian won, but if Bairuoxi was added to the mix, Musian did not win. Of course, Yayu didn't win either. But the current situation is probably what Yayu wants to see. After all, although it was not confirmed that Bairuoxi was a demon cultivator, people would still discuss Bairuoxi's affairs. During this period of time, the most discussed topic in Tianqian City is probably whether Miss Bai is a demon cultivator. Previously, Bairuoxi was praised to the top by most people, but now, as long as there is a little negative news about her, people will belittle her to the point of being completely destroyed. No matter what era, there are many such people. Master Mu is coming out. Suddenly someone shouted, and everyone looked up. The tall and handsome young man had already walked out of the tea house. As for Bairuoxi, she had just stepped on the flying sword and left. Realizing that everyone's eyes were looking at him, Musian arched his hands and said, "Today, I have made you laugh." Master Ye has always had some grievances with Miss Ruoxi. This time, I think he is holding a grudge, so he slandered her. So the fact that Miss Bai is a demon cultivator is just something you made up, someone in the crowd asked with a somewhat suspicious tone. Musian shook his head and said, Bairuoxi is not a demon cultivator, but I don't know whether demon cultivators exist or not. As soon as these words came out, there was an uproar in the crowd. What this means is that there are indeed demon cultivators in Tianqian City. Most people believe this, because there was a demon cultivator in Tianqian City before, and it was finally destroyed by several major forces. No one would be surprised if a second demon cultivator appeared now. Musian glanced at the crowd and said, "Just now, when senior sister Lan was about to use the chi-seeking technique, she was stopped by Yayu. After that, he admitted that he had slandered Miss Bai as a demon cultivator. As for the reason, I don't know." As these words fell, the crowd suddenly quieted down, and everyone was thinking about what Musian had just said. If I remember correctly, the chi-seeing technique of Lianji sect can see the aura of others, and even tell whether a person is lying. Why did Yayu admit that he slandered Bairuoxi when Lan Murian was about to use the chi-seeing technique? Just throwing out a sentence, but it caused people to imagine it wildly. Musian retracted his gaze, bowed to them, and walked off the stage. He knew that these people would not believe his one-sided words. But after this, people would not focus entirely on Bairuoxi. Because the person who just said this was Musian, the eldest son of the Mu family in Tianqian City. What Musian said, whether true or false, would cause heated discussions. Let Yayu help Bairuoxi share people's attention, that's enough. If it were in modern times, the title of this time would probably be like this: Reversal, Yayu who reported Bairuoxi as a demon cultivator, but he himself is suspected of being a demon cultivator. It was on the hot search in minutes. Musian came to the Yes sisters. Huang Manting, who was beside the two, had long disappeared. I think she went back with Mr. Huang before. After all, such a thing happened. Huang Manting naturally wanted to know what happened in the tea house at that time. Are you okay, Brother Mu? Yechian looked up at Musian, her eyes full of concern. Thanks to you, everything is fine, Musian smiled. Yechian lowered her head in shame and whispered, sorry, I didn't help much, and my cousin caused you so much trouble. This girl is really kind-hearted. She still feels guilty even though it was Yayu who did it. Musian shook his head and said, it is because I know that you are standing behind me that I have the courage to confront Yayu. He paused and said with some regret, but I'm afraid I can't take you to Kaihai today. Yechian nodded in understanding. After all, there is nothing we can do about this kind of thing. Now that they go to Kaihai, people's attention will be focused on them. The young master of the Ye family has just offended Bairuoxi and Musian. At this critical juncture, the Ye sisters are still having dinner with the eldest young master of the Mu mansion, which will always cause some gossip. Musian looked at Ye Lingxian again and said, Sister Lingxian, I'll go back first. Ye Lingxian nodded modestly, looking at Musian who was about to leave, and the exhaustion on his face. She hesitated for a long time, opened her mouth slightly, and wanted to say something to comfort him. But in the end, she was still hindered by the arrogance and reserve of the little girl, and resisted the impulse in her heart. You must not be fooled, Musian is not a good person. This can be seen from the behaviors that Musian had done to Yechian before that made people feel good. I have to keep an eye on Chiener and not let her be fooled by Musian. Ye Lingxian looked at the back of the boy leaving and slowly calmed down. After returning to the Mu mansion, Musian walked straight into the study and opened his personal interface. The word supporting role on the interface has been filled with a pink heart frame for the most part, and the two words supporting role also look quite vague. This pink love frame, maybe it is linked to my luck. Musian made such a guess. He had been wondering about one thing before: what exactly is the pink love frame wrapped around the word supporting role? And today, after a test on the test monument, when he saw the pink luck emanating from the test monument, Musian had such a bold guess in his heart. Because of his operation today, Ye Lingxian and Yechian's favorability should have increased a lot, so this pink love frame has become more colorful. If the word supporting role in the future is completely filled with this color, I am afraid I will no longer be a supporting role. But what does this pink luck mean? I have never heard of it before. In short, the matter of pink luck may only be investigated slowly after joining the sect. As for the past 2 days, it is better to practice at home honestly and improve your strength. He felt that he was about to practice Qi at the 5th level. If he practiced all night in Bairuoxi's room in the past 2 days, he should be able to practice Qi at the 5th level soon. Musian thought of this and turned around to leave the study. At this time, he suddenly noticed that there seemed to be a paper crane flying outside the window. Musian got up and opened the window completely, and saw the paper crane landing by the window. This should not be the paper crane of my senior sister, Musian said in his heart. Since he visited Lan Mulian that day, he knew that he was actually communicating with 2 people through paper cranes. One was Lan Mulian, and the other one, he didn't know who it was yet. However, judging from the other party's tone and even the handwriting, it is obviously a woman. And the believer who wrote to him is likely to be in Lianji sect. Musian did not open the paper crane, but put it directly into the ring. After entering Lianji sect in 2 days, he will reply to the other party. At that time, just follow the paper crane and see where it flies to know the other party's identity. Musian left the study and knocked on Bairuoxi's room. The tall, cold, and weak beauty sat on the chair, with strands of black hair hanging on her beautiful face, her slender neck looming, snow-white and crystal, and her graceful and protruding figure was completely hidden in this somewhat conservative white palace skirt. This palace skirt adds a bit of high and cold temperament to it, but at the same time it also makes Musian more eager to explore the mysterious unknown. Seeing Musian, Bairuoxi stood up, his autumn eyes flashing with worry, and said, "How is it outside now?" Musian walked to Bairuoxi's side, gently hugged the curvy beauty in his arms, and said, "It's okay now." He lowered his head to the girl's earlobe and said softly, "The sect assessment will begin in 2 days. Let's practice at home for the next 2 days, Ruoxi." Bairuoxi secretly glanced at Musian, and noticed that he was staring at her with burning eyes. She understood what he meant, and she was even more shy. She couldn't help but lower her eyes and whispered, "Yeah." Musian held Bairuoxi's soft body horizontally and went to bed. Time passed quickly, and in a blink of an eye, 2 days had passed. And on this day, a grand sect assessment finally came. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 88. The next morning, Musian woke up early. Or rather, he didn't sleep at all last night. It wasn't that Musian didn't want to rest, but after all, it was the day before the sect assessment. For Bairuoxi's sake, he thought about it and finally decided to sacrifice his sleep time a little. Musian tilted his head slightly and looked at the beauty beside him. The light of the morning sun shone in, making the girl's almost perfect sleeping face look particularly beautiful. The quilt was slightly pulled down, revealing 2 snow-white and attractive shoulders. It's easy to imagine what kind of scene you will see if the quilt is completely pulled off. Musian quietly got out of bed and gently pulled the quilt, wanting to cover Bairuoxi's beautiful figure again to avoid seeing things that shouldn't be seen. However, at this time, Bairuoxi quietly opened her eyes were full of charm, staring at Musian, and said, "Are we going to leave so early?" "It's not early, it's already noon." Musian gently lifted the quilt, and the scene under the quilt appeared in his vision. Originally, he wanted Bairuoxi to sleep for a while, but since the other party had already woken up, there was no need to tiptoe. Musian gently patted Bairuoxi's buttocks and said, "Pack up, let's go later." With the personality of the senior sister, she should be waiting for us at the scene in advance. Bairuoxi gently pushed away Musian's palm, and said softly, "You go first, I need to change my clothes and dress up a little, which may take a little time." After that, she sat on the brocade couch with one leg, and the quilt wrapped her graceful figure to avoid being stared at by someone. Even if there has been physical intimacy, being stared at so unreservedly would still make one feel a little shy. Musian nodded and did not refuse. He knew how long it would take for a girl to spend some time dressing up. After leaving the room, Musian saw Wei Mengru in the yard, who seemed to be thinking about life. Her dress today seemed a little more simple than before, wearing a plain robe that completely hid her protruding figure. Her long hair was scattered, slightly covering her beautiful face. Although her figure seemed ordinary, Musian knew very well how beautiful the scene was hidden under the seemingly simple robe. In the past, he had seen Wei Mengru's huge heart many times. And those long legs, Musian had actually been greedy for a long time, but due to the other party's strength, he could only suppress the bold thoughts in his heart. "Sister Mengru, are you awake so early?" Musian took the initiative to greet her. Although the cultivators in the spirit refining realm do not need to rest, they will occasionally choose to relax by sleeping in order to get enough energy. Wei Mengru glanced at him coldly and said disdainfully, "You were too noisy last night." "Miss Bai doesn't seem to know that I can hear her voice next door," she continued. Musian's expression remained unchanged and he smiled. "Sister Mengru, are you confident in the sect assessment today?" Wei Mengru already knew what kind of character her young master was, so Musian simply didn't bother to explain or cover up. Wei Mengru said lightly, "If I can't pass the sect assessment, it's even more impossible for others. This is the truth. If we have to talk about strength, Wei Mengru is actually the strongest among the disciples in this assessment. After all, if Wei Mengru's talent was not restrained by her bad luck, she might have reached a higher level now. This is the real envy of talents," Musian sighed in his heart. Because of her talent that even the heavens are jealous, Wei Mengru has such bad luck. Although so far, Musian has never seen Wei Mengru have any bad luck because of this bad luck. "Sister Mengru, do you want to go out of the city with me now?" Musian asked. "The meeting place for today's sect assessment is outside the city gate, and the time is set at SI time, which is about 9 o'clock in the morning." Wei Mengru hesitated for a moment, and finally nodded gently. If possible, she doesn't want to leave Musian for too long. Or rather, she can't leave Musian for too long. The two left the Mu mansion and met a few scattered assessment disciples outside the city gate. Among these people, Musian also saw the old acquaintance Gongsun Cheng, and Yayu, who was sitting on a huge rock and pretending to be a master without saying a word. In addition, some of the assessment disciples were not selected by Lan Murian. I think they are the disciples who went to participate in the assessment on their own this time. Noticing Musian's arrival, everyone looked over, some with friendly eyes, and some quite unfriendly, but they hid their hostility very well. "Sister Mengru, this sect assessment is quite dangerous. What should I do if I suddenly feel a little scared?" Musian said worriedly. Wei Mengru sneered and didn't bother to pay attention to him. "This guy doesn't need to participate in the sect assessment to join the section, isn't he just teasing her now? Sister Mengru really knows me too well." Musian felt a little regretful. "Sooner or later, I will let Sister Mengru hold up her skirt with both hands and obey my orders with a reluctant look." Musian set a small goal for himself. If it were Yechian or Bairu Oxi, they would comfort him when they heard this now. If it were Ye Lingxian, she would probably raise her opinions about the sect assessment in a more arrogant way, and would not comfort them directly. At this time, Wei Mengru suddenly whispered, "Be careful, they seem to be somewhat hostile to you." Musian came back to his senses from his thoughts, looked up, and caught a glimpse of the coldness in Gongsun Cheng's eyes. Musian casually retracted his gaze and smiled. "Gongsun Cheng is just a rotten fish and shrimp. There are also a few people who looked at you with a bit of hostility just now. It may be that Gongsun Cheng secretly colluded with the disciples who participated in the sect assessment this time," Wei Mengru continued. Wei Mengru can keenly perceive the kindness and malice of others. Wei Mengru can also perceive the random glances of Musian on her, but she is too lazy to expose it. Musian was stunned for a moment and said, "When rotten fish and rotten shrimps are put together, aren't they still rotten fish and rotten shrimps?" Wayman grew. Although she felt that what the young master said was a bit too much, she did have the same feeling. Musian seemed not to notice Gongsun Cheng's gaze, and retracted his gaze, passing the time by casually looking at the scenery outside the city. He naturally knew why Gongsun Cheng had such a strong hostility towards him. However, Musian felt that the other party should thank him. Gongsun Cheng was obviously the same as him. He was initially positioned as a villain supporting role, and he was a villain supporting role who was trampled under the feet of the protagonist in the early stage. It's just that Musian seemed to have turned on the aura of ridicule, successfully attracting all of Yayu's hatred to himself, so that Gongsun Cheng, the villain supporting role, did not play the role of being slapped in the face by Yayu. After waiting for about 2 incense sticks, Bairuoxi also arrived. Everyone's eyes fell on the beauty in the palace skirt, and their eyes were all a little surprised and admiring. Yayu's sight was also attracted. However, he did not show it, but quickly retracted his gaze. After 2 days of practice, he has become much calmer. Now, there is no rush for this moment. When we arrive at Lianji sect and the sect assessment begins, we can defeat Musian squarely and say goodbye to this black history completely, then strive to become an inner disciple directly. At that time, Bairuoxi should understand how stupid she was to break off the engagement. Musian did not know what Yayu was thinking, and he was also not interested in knowing. After waiting patiently for a while, Musian suddenly noticed that there seemed to be a stream of light rushing in from a distance. He raised his head slightly and looked, and Lan Mulian, wearing a moon-white skirt, appeared in everyone's sight. Her white skirt fluttered and fell quietly from the clouds. Damn, there is still holy light, and I can't see anything. When Musian looked up, he couldn't see the beautiful long legs of his senior sister. It seemed that Lan Murian cast some magic on him to avoid exposure. Senior sister, Musian said with a fist. Lan Murian nodded slightly, glanced at the people present, and said, "It seems that everyone is here." Her eyes stayed on Bairuoxi and Wayman grew for a moment, and said, "The cultivators in the refining spirit realm will report directly to the sect with me. For the rest of you, I will take you to the foot of the mountain to participate in the sect assessment." As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at the 2 women with envy. Gongsun Cheng's eyes flashed with a hint of joy, and he looked at Musian inadvertently. He deliberately joined forces with other assessment disciples 2 days in advance. Wasn't it just to avenge the previous shame today? In Tianqian City, you have the Mu family behind you, so it's not easy for us to take action, and we dare not take action. But now that he had gone to Lianji sect, and the sect assessment for the refining spirit realm was exempted from the test, without Wei Mengru and Bairuoxi around him, the situation was completely different. When seeing Musian's face change slightly, Gongsun Cheng and several cultivators beside him looked at each other and smiled knowingly. Yayu also had a look of surprise in his eyes, and looked up in the direction of Musian. At this moment, the noble young man frowned, his face was extremely gloomy, and he fully demonstrated the self-cultivation of the movie Emperor. As the saying goes, a person's reputation is like the shadow of a tree. Even if the Mu family can't reach Lianji sect, Musian is still Musian. There are many people who hate Musian. But there are very few people who dare to offend Musian openly. Gongsun Cheng secretly contacted other people to secretly deal with Musian, and he must have paid some conditions that are enough to make people excited. Needless to say, Yayu was thinking about revenge on Musian all day long, and he had already been possessed by the devil. In fact, since the news of direct exemption from the test for the refining spirit realm came out, this sect assessment has been undercurrent. Those who used to hate Musian but dared not offend him, after learning this news, may have some bold ideas. Although they don't know, Musian doesn't need to take the test at all. He participated in the sect assessment just to experience the difficulty of the assessment. Sensing those intentional or unintentional glances, Musian secretly shook his head and chuckled. All I can say is, let them make as much noise as they want. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 89. Under the leadership of Lan Mulian, a group of selected disciples sat on the clouds wrapped in immortal energy and headed for the final destination, Lianji sect. Muzian lowered his head and glanced at the white clouds at his feet. Standing in front of him was Lan Mulian. She wore a beautiful white dress with a white background and embroidered clouds. Her long curly hair was simply pulled up with a thin white ribbon, which set off her beautiful face. Although the dress on her body did not reveal much skin, it was not difficult to judge from the plump curve of her chest that she was a woman with a large face. Lan Mulian seemed to feel something. She glanced sideways at him and said with a smile, "Is something wrong?" The God Refining Realm is the God Refining Realm, which means it is much sharper than ordinary people. Muzian calmly withdrew Luan Miao's gaze and said, "Senior sister, can you use this cloud when you reach the God Refining Realm, or is it just you? That's the kind of magic you can do. The Divine Refining Realm only allows you to fly with a sword, but it cannot allow you to step on clouds. I'm afraid there is no special skill in the world that can achieve this level." Lan Mulian paused and continued, "This is my magic weapon." "Senior sister, this little rich woman is indeed very rich." Muzian continued to ask, "Are those clouds behind you also the magic weapon of senior sister?" Behind Muzian, there were nearly 10 similar clouds floating at this time, with 3 or 4 assessment disciples sitting on each cloud. "These all come from the same magic weapon," Lan Mulian explained patiently. Muzian suddenly realized. "Have you told anyone else about the natural furnace cauldron?" Lan Mulian suddenly asked. Muzian shook his head. "I only took the initiative to tell my senior sister. I don't trust anyone else." Hearing this, Lan Mulian nodded with satisfaction and said, "Your physique is extremely dangerous. Even after joining the sect, you must not expose this matter, otherwise it may attract the covetousness of others. My natural furnace cauldron is only useful to female cultivators." "What does senior sister mean by saying that if I expose the matter of the natural furnace cauldron, I might be targeted by female cultivators or even elders in the sect? Having said that, isn't this a good thing? Once the natural furnace is exposed, will I start a horde of wives and concubines, living a boring life being taken care of by a rich woman and a royal sister every day?" After thinking about it, Muzian was certainly not a fool. He nodded and said sincerely, "Thank you, senior sister, for waking me up. He has a special physique. It would be fine if he is only targeted by 1 or 2 female cultivators. But if too many people covet him, the situation will be completely different." Muzian didn't want to work hard anymore. He was hungry and wanted to eat soft food. "But I don't want to lie in bed holding my waist and lament every day. It's better for senior sister." Even if she knew that he was a natural furnace, her attitude would be the same as before, completely different from the monsters outside. Everyone covets him, except senior sister, who is really thinking about him. If senior sister is interested in the Tiansheng furnace, there is no harm in sacrificing herself a little in the future. Lan Mulian's eyes turned to Bairu Oxi, who was sitting with her legs crossed, and said, "Junior sister Bai, please come with me to the sect to report." The cold and weak girl said softly raised her head and looked at Lan Mulian, and suddenly asked, "Senior sister, can I participate in the sex assessment together? If possible, I would also like to take part in the sex assessment," Wei Mengru also said. She was not worried about Muzian participating in the sect examination alone. After all, she had been accompanying Muzian in the past few years. She thought that she would go with Muzian for the sect examination, but she didn't expect that, in the divine realm, even sect examinations are exempted. Participating in the sex assessment in the God-refining realm is meaningless. Secondly, it is unfair to other assessment disciples in the chi-refining realm. Lan Mulian declined politely, "You'd better go directly to the sect with me." "Report it?" Musian then laughed and said, "Don't worry, go report first. I just want to experience the difficulty of the assessment. If it doesn't work, I will leave early." Wei Mengru frowned inadvertently and looked at the young master deeply. To be honest, she was a little confused as to why Musian insisted on participating in the sex assessment, when he could have simply skipped the assessment and reported on it. Why spend so much effort? Just to tease Yayu, Gong Sunchinj, and others? Not likely. Musian is a person who puts interests first and will not go to any trouble just to tease others. Bairuoxi was also hesitant to speak, but finally fell silent and chose to respect Musian's decision. "Senior sister, let me ask one more question. Should there be monitors for the sect assessment trial?" Musian asked. Lan Mulian nodded slightly. "There are elders responsible for surveillance in each area." "Then I'll be relieved." Musian smiled. Lan Mulian couldn't help but look at him twice and said via voice message, "What do you want to do?" "I have too many enemies. I'm worried that they will beat me to death during the sex assessment, so I want to confirm if there will be someone responsible for monitoring the assessment." Musian replied via voice message. "Senior sister, will you be responsible for monitoring my area then? Can you help me if I encounter danger?" Lan Mulian glanced at him sideways and said calmly, "If you give up the assessment, someone will naturally take action to send you away from the assessment site." When she said this, she continued with a somewhat teaching tone, "The Mu family is invincible in Tianqian City, but in Lianji sect, the identity of the Mu family can't help you. Don't make too many enemies. The head of the sect will not ask about some small frictions between disciples on weekdays. Making friends with some Taoist friends appropriately will be of great help to your future life in Lianji section. That being said, why do I feel that you are a lone ranger?" Musian nodded obediently and said, "Thank you for your teachings, I will keep it in mind." "You participated in the sect assessment, really just to experience the difficulty of the assessment?" Lan Murian hesitated for a moment and suddenly asked. Musian thought for a moment and answered ambiguously, "Almost." "This guy really has other plans." Lan Murian's lips under the gauze opened slightly, and she couldn't help but want to ask him what his plan was. But in the end, she was embarrassed to ask Musian what the purpose of participating in the assessment was. Anyway, once the sect assessment begins, the answer will surely be revealed soon. Lianji sect. Kanghai Peak. On the top of the mountain, there is a huge shadow that blocks the sun and flaps its wings from high in the sky. Musian was successfully airdropped by Lan Mulian and thrown into the trial forest of Kanghai Peak from midair. "This senior sister is definitely taking revenge on me." Musian rubbed his sore waist and sighed helplessly. But there is no way. After all, he has been defeated one after another during this period. In addition, he just deliberately hooked the senior sister's appetite and refused to explain the reason for participating in the sect assessment, which naturally made Lan Mulian want to take revenge. Although he looks cold and aloof at ordinary times, Lan Mulian is still a little girl's heart. Musian looked at the lush and green forests around him and couldn't help thinking in his heart. According to Lan Mulian's explanation when he came here just now, Lianji sect has a total of 9 peaks, to be precise, 10, but the 10th peak is where the leader of Lianji sect lives. On weekdays, few disciples pass by, so few people count the 10th peak. Musian looked up at the sky. Under the sky, there were disciples who were taking the test falling from the air one after another, which looked quite spectacular. This scene looked a bit like the fairy version of chicken eating. It was just that the scene was changed to the fairy holy land surrounded by clouds and mist. All 9 peaks were trial sites this time. After passing one of the trial sites, the test was considered over. In these 9 peaks, there were many disciples who took the test at the foot of each mountain, and the requirements of the test were also very simple. Just pass through the trial forest and reach the top of the mountain. It doesn't sound difficult, but you have to know that the cultivators in the Chi training realm can't fly with swords at all. It is almost impossible for ordinary people to climb to the top of the mountain with their own spiritual energy. Of course, it's impossible for ordinary people, but it doesn't mean that those with extraordinary talents can't either. This simple requirement has actually screened a large number of disciples who took the test this time. There will be more test disciples nearby later. I have to leave here before that. Looking at the cultivators who entered the trial forest one after another in the air, Musian retracted his gaze and walked towards the depths of the forest. Although he could leave this place as long as he asked to give up the assessment, Musian didn't want to leave before the assessment began. After all, he had to help Ye Qian and Ye Lingxian get through this assessment safely. The sun shone through the lush green branches and leaves, the wind moved the leaves, and the colorful light and shadows moved on the ground. The view in front was a little hazy under the cover of clouds and mist. Musian walked deeper into the forest along the path. At this time, the benefits of being selected by the sect examiner were reflected. They entered the forest earlier than others, so they had more time to familiarize themselves with the terrain characteristics of the forest in advance. Although it was unfair, there was no fairness in this world. Moreover, the disciples who were selected by the sect examiner must be extremely talented geniuses, and they could naturally get more resources. It's really better to be a cultivator in the refining spirit realm. After being able to fly with a sword, time efficiency has been greatly improved. After walking for nearly half an hour, Musian finally couldn't help but complain in his heart. This forest is ridiculously large. He has been walking for so long, but still hasn't seen the exit. He even feels that the scenery around him is unchanged. The forest at the foot of Canghai Peak alone is so large. How large an area does the Lianji sect occupy? While thinking about this in his heart, Musian continued to walk deeper into the forest. Strange, is that a formation in front? After nearly half an hour, Musian's eyes suddenly fell on a certain direction not far ahead. The ground was filled with white mist, and at the end of the mist, there was a towering tree, and under the tree, it seemed that a formation exuding a deep breath could be vaguely seen. Senior Sister Lan said before that the 10 main peaks of Lianji sect all have formations set up by their leaders. It is a life-killing formation used to prevent foreign enemies. It seems that this formation should be the most superficial formation in this trial forest. Musian approached the formation and unknowingly came to the formation. The surface of the formation exuded a faint purple light, but because it was blocked by a layer of mist, the faint purple light could not be seen clearly. According to the books I had read in the past, this formation should be the formation center of the trial forest. After observing for a while, Musian suddenly said to himself, "Something is wrong, this formation doesn't seem to reject me." It stands to reason that the formation center of a formation is difficult for ordinary people to get close to, but he not only found it easily, but even easily got close to it. Musian took a half step and tried to get close to the formation center. Still not stopped. Not only was there no stop, but the moment he stepped into the formation, he felt a wave of information like a tide pouring into his mind. He could clearly see the structure of this formation, and even feel the mystery in it. In this formation, Musian also sensed a familiar cold breath. It was a palpitation as if being stared at by a giant python. The queen of the demon world, Musian took a breath of cold air, contributing to the warming of the climate in the fairy world. After defeating the black-robed man, the queen of the demon realm had appeared before. At that time, she asked Musian to be a traitor, and then left after saying a few words. Since then, Musian has always wondered if she was not afraid of his betrayal. Now it seems that she must have left some special mark on him a long time ago. And the aura in this mark is similar to the aura emitted by this formation at this time. But even so, it cannot explain why he can pass through the formation so easily. Unless This formation was drawn by the traitor hidden in the Lianji sect. Originally, I thought that I would try it slowly after entering the Lianji sect to see who the traitor of the Lianji sect is. I didn't expect to meet him in this way. Muzian quickly woke up, shook his head gently, and slightly restrained his thoughts. These things are not important for the time being. The important thing is, he found the eye of this formation and can even step into it. If this formation can be disassembled for his use, then this assessment at Kanghai Peak, is there any meaning in the competition? Sister Lingxian, if you come with us for the sect assessment, I think we will be able to overcome the difficulties soon. Believe me, with my strength, I will definitely be able to protect you and Sister Qian'er. Ye Lingxian walked on the path in the forest, holding Ye Qian's hand, listening to the words of the young man beside her with a smile, but in fact, she was a little impatient in her heart. At this moment, behind the Ye sisters, there were about 6 or 7 cultivators. The leader was wearing a golden 4-clawed python robe, with a jade-like face and a tall posture, but the deep and dark eye circles marked that this person should be a master of time management. He is the third prince of the Dongzhou Dagon dynasty. Just now, Ye Lingxian brought Ye Qian into this trial forest together, and was spotted by the third prince not long after. These 2 girls, one is wearing a purple skirt with an elegant temperament and beautiful skin like jade, and the other is wearing a green skirt, belonging to the simple and cute type. In the past, when he was in the Dagon dynasty, the third prince had never seen such beautiful sisters. When he saw the Ye sisters, he was so excited that he couldn't help but come up to chat with them. In the past, the third prince had won the hearts of many girls with his noble status and handsome face. But the sisters were very wary and ignored him. Excellent hunters are often very patient, but the third prince is obviously not an excellent hunter. His identity destined him not to be an excellent hunter. The third prince followed the 2 for nearly half an hour, and his patience was almost exhausted. Sister Lingxian, I really want to help you pass the test. Do you really want to refuse me so firmly? The third prince's tone was already a bit more threatening. This kind of words, threatening some ignorant little girls, is no problem, but it naturally has little effect on Ye Lingxian. Qian'er and I just want to pass the sect test alone this time. Ye Lingxian spoke again and refused tactfully. The third prince narrowed his eyes slightly. The more reserved Ye Lingxian behaved, the more he looked forward to the scene after he took her down. However, just as the third prince was about to continue speaking, a clear voice suddenly came from not far away. Qian'er, Lingxian, you are here. Come with me, I will take you out of this assessment. Several people looked up at the person who spoke not far away in front of them. The man was wearing a black robe, with a handsome appearance, a gentle smile on his face, and a thin figure. Although he was not very handsome, he seemed to be a little handsome after looking at him for a long time. He is Yayu, the assessment disciple personally selected by the sect assessor. This time the accompanying disciple whispered. They are the attendants of the third prince, and they are also carefully selected assessment disciples. Their ages meet the requirements of the sect assessment, and their purpose is purely to escort the third prince through the sect assessment. Yayu, the same surname as the sisters, so, should he be related to the sisters? The third prince's eyes narrowed slightly, and his sight fell on Yayu, and he asked, "Who are you?" Yayu. After saying that, Yayu looked up at the third prince and said lightly, "Sorry, Qian'er Lingxian and I have already made an appointment for the sect assessment. The third prince should look for someone else." As soon as these words came out, the third prince's eyes immediately became sharp, and he said in a deep voice, "So, you want to block my way, Master Ye?" Yayu shrugged and smiled faintly, "If you stop here and let me take them away, I won't stand in your way." For a moment, there was a sense of tension between the 2 sides. If it were the past, this should be the scene where Yayu defeated the third prince and saved the beauty. However, at this moment, Ye Lingxian looked at the confrontation between the 2 sides in silence, her eyebrows inadvertently frowned. What do these people want to do? To be honest, she has no interest in either the third prince or Yayu. After all, when did she make an appointment with Yayu to pass the sect assessment together? Or think of a way to get rid of these people? When Yalingxian thought of this, her eyes swept around. She suddenly seemed to notice something, slightly tilted her head, and the corner of her eyes fell on a certain direction not far from her side. Huh! Yalingxian made a sound of surprise. What's wrong, sister? Yeqian asked in a low voice. There seems to be someone there. Yalingxian frowned slightly, and her clear and bright eyes stared at a certain direction not far ahead. She has a special physique, and she is born with a strange perception of plants and even various medicinal materials. Just now, through the nearby plants, Yalingxian sensed that there was a familiar aura nearby. It's an acquaintance. Come with me. Without saying a word, Yalingxian took Yeqian's hand and trotted in that direction. The third prince and Yayu, who were in a confrontation, both reacted. They looked at each other, and tacitly retracted their sights and followed behind Yalingxian. They would confront here because of Yalingxian and Yeqian. If they lost them because of a fight here, it would be a loss. Yayu followed closely behind Yalingxian, looking at the slender backs of his two sisters, and staring at the third prince with hatred, and anger surged in his heart. This should have been a great opportunity to repair his relationship with his two sisters, but now it has turned out like this. What did Lingxian and the others find out, and why did they suddenly run in this direction? When Yayu thought of this, Yalingxian had already stopped. She stood still and looked up at the boy sitting cross-legged under the tree in front of her. It was him. Yayu looked up, and when he saw the man clearly, his eyes suddenly became much sharper. Musian. So, they were the protagonists all along. Author, CCC. Chapter 90. Musian sat cross-legged under the big tree, closed his eyes tightly, and quietly felt the mystery of this formation in the hazy white mist. I have never felt this wonderful feeling even from a woman before. This formation is extremely mysterious, and the lines drawn in the formation are quite complicated, but I don't know if it is the mark left on Musian by the queen of the demon world or something else. Musian could clearly feel that he could analyze the drawing methods of this formation one by one. This feeling, to put it crudely, can be described in one word: great. There is a feeling of sudden enlightenment when you work hard to solve a math problem. I wish that people all over the world knew that I had solved a math problem. Musian had been sitting cross-legged in the formation for nearly half an hour. From the beginning, he has been wandering in the mystery of this formation, roughly remembering the formation in his mind, and even completely forgot about the time in the outside world. At this time, he suddenly felt a slight movement coming from beside him. Musian slowly opened his eyes and saw the girl in purple skirt standing not far outside the formation, and the innocent girl Yeqian with rather large breasts beside her. It is the Ye family sisters. Not far behind them, several monks were standing there, staring at him closely. The leader was wearing a four-clawed python robe and was quite handsome. Who is this man? He is quite handsome, but he is still far behind me. When Musian just thought of this, he suddenly felt a look full of hostility. Following that look, he looked at the figure wearing the young man in black robe was staring at him. It's Yayu. Damn it, how did you lure all the Japanese here? Musian glanced around and saw the somewhat embarrassed expressions of the Yes sisters, and immediately guessed something. He stood up, stretched his waist, and came to a few people. He secretly looked at this handsome young man who was slightly inferior to himself and said, "Who is this? You are so presumptuous that you can't even recognize the third prince of the Dacian dynasty," the attendant on the side scolded. Musian showed a look of sudden realization, raised his head and looked at the young man in front of him in surprise, and said, "Are you the third prince? The dark circles under my eyes are probably much more serious than my addiction to beauty in the past." The third prince looked at Musian condescendingly and said lightly, "Yeah." However, the hostility in the eyes looking at Musian was obviously not as great as it was at the beginning. After all, he was quite satisfied with the other party's attitude. "Who are you?" he asked arrogantly, while casually glancing at the two girls beside him. It was obvious that these two sisters had just noticed the existence of this young man and rushed here. Now that they see each other being so humble in front of him, they must also consider who can lead them smoothly in this trial forest. Overcome the difficulties and pass the sect examination. Musian cupped his hands and said, "You may not have heard of the third young master of Gongsun's family in Tianqian City, but my Gongsun's family is quite famous in Tianqian City." The Gongsun family in Tianqian City, the third prince frowned inadvertently and said, "The patriarch Gongsun seems to have 6 heirs. What are your names?" Gongsun Chen, Musian said with a smile. Yu on the side opened his mouth slightly, as if he wanted to say something, but he still held it back. Although he hates Musian extremely, if he exposes Musian at this time, he alone may not be able to save the Ye family sisters. Gongsun Chen, the third prince searched for this name in his mind, and soon his face suddenly became clear. He had heard of the name Gongsun Chen. After all, the Gongsun family was famous not only in Tianqian City, but also in the entire Daqian dynasty. And Gongsun Chen is the #1 genius of the Gongsun family. This matter is not easy to handle. The emperor in the human world actually does not have much binding force on these immortal cultivating families. Of course, this does not mean that the immortal cultivating families are not afraid of the emperor. After all, there are many capable people and strangers in the Daqian dynasty. The current emperor has been cultivating Taoism for hundreds of years and has considerable strength. Not vulgar. The imperial advisor of the current dynasty was the Dingai Shenzhen of the Daqian dynasty. But under normal circumstances, even people from the government would not casually offend a family that cultivates immortality like the Gongsun family. The third prince is addicted to beauty, but that doesn't mean that his mind is full of lust. At least he still has some logic. Seeing Musian smiling and nodding, the third prince stared at the young man in front of him uncertainly. After a while, he moved the corner of his mouth and said with a smile, "It turns out to be the third young master of the Gongsun family. I didn't expect that you would also participate in this clan door assessment. Isn't it the same with the third prince? I think we are the same type of people. We occasionally want to experience what it's like to be tested by a section," Musian said with a smile. "Yes, I didn't have many opportunities to practice in the palace in the past. It's rare to have such an opportunity this time. Naturally, I should experience it before I can hone myself." The third prince smiled and nodded. Musian listened humbly and nodded. The third prince is right, you are indeed a man of great wisdom. A word from you is worth more than a single word. Seeing that the relationship between the two of them suddenly improved while chatting, Yu couldn't help but open his mouth slightly, wanting to say something, but he couldn't find a chance to interrupt, so he had to endure it. After the two exchanged some rude words, the third prince suddenly changed his tone and said, "Young Master Gongsun, I wonder what your relationship is with these two sisters from the Ye family." Hearing this, Ye Lingxian and Ye Qian looked at Musian with both eyes. Why did this fool directly pierce the ambiguous window paper between me and the Ye sisters? How can I operate in the future? Musian said with a smile. "Third prince, are you interested in the two of them? One of them fell in love." This is the art of answering. Answering the third prince straightforwardly will only disappoint the Ye sisters, because Ye Lingxian and Ye Qian are both present at this moment, and it is impossible for him to say that they are all my wings or that they are all my sisters. The only way is to answer questions with questions. The third prince was silent for a moment and said with a smile, "Young Master Gongsun, if you quit right now, I will remember your kindness today. After this assessment is over, I will give you sufficient reward." Musian thought for a moment and said, "Actually, our Gongsun family doesn't lack any reward." "So, you won't let go?" The third prince stared into Musian's eyes. Although they were still chatting and laughing one moment, the atmosphere suddenly became extremely solemn the next second. The attendants behind the third prince all stared at Musian unkindly. At this time, there was a faint sound of footsteps in front of the jungle on the side, and Musian glanced slightly. Gongsun Cheng. The real owner appears. Was he attracted by Ye Yu's physique or by me? Musian suddenly sent a message to Ye Lingxian and Ye Qian, follow me. After saying that, he immediately took Ye Qian and Ye Lingxuan's little hands. An attendant behind the third prince reacted very quickly and immediately raised his hand to grab him. But at this moment, he suddenly felt as if his body was restrained by something, and he stiffened for a moment. Ye Lingxian raised his hand, and a faint green light quietly emerged from his hand. He clenched his fist slightly and then controlled the attendant. Don't let them escape, the third prince shouted immediately. But at this moment, he suddenly saw Musian looking up at Gongsun Cheng, with a look of ecstasy on his face. Second brother, save me, stop them. As soon as Gongsun Cheng raised his head, he saw Musian pulling two girls towards him. Before his brain could figure out what was going on here, the third prince behind him immediately sneered, you stop them, I will chase them. Gongsun Cheng. Gongsun Cheng. Several attendants were very decisive and killed in the direction of Gongsun Cheng. The third prince also didn't pause at all and rushed towards Musian's direction. The imperial court does not want to offend the immortal cultivation family easily, but this is the Lianji sect, and neither the imperial court nor the immortal cultivation family's identity matters here. Musian, stop. At this time, Ye Yu behind him also reacted and chased after him. His face was full of anger and he stared at Musian. Musian calmly grabbed the small hands of Ye Lingxian and Ye Qian and stepped into the forest clearing in front, activating the magic circle under his feet. When the third prince caught up with Musian, he was shocked to find that Musian and others who had just stepped into the forest clearing had disappeared from sight in an instant. Behind him, Gongsun Cheng, who had just appeared and was beaten by the third prince's men, looked gloomy and said angrily, you were deceived by Musian, I have nothing to do with him. The voice was full of anger. At this moment, Musian was sitting in a cave, raising his hand and looking at his palm, and sighed in his heart with some regret. Sure enough, I'm still not very skilled in controlling this formation. If I can fully control it, I might be able to send the Yes sisters directly to the top of Canghai Peak. Just as Musian thought about this, he suddenly felt a quiet fragrance coming quietly. He raised his head and saw a girl in a purple skirt squatting in front of him. Her eyebrows were picturesque, her skin was like cream, and her watery eyes were looking at him worriedly. Wearing a pair of light purple embroidered shoes under the skirt, they are elegant and charming. Are you okay? Ye Qian also walked over, with concern in his eyes, and handed him the handkerchief. Musian shook his head and smiled, it doesn't matter. Originally, he was thinking of recruiting some people to deal with Gongsun Cheng after entering the forest. After all, he can do the same things that Gongsun Cheng can do. He can even do better than Gongsun Cheng. But now, there is no need to go to such trouble. It seems that the effects of villain friend are not all negative. If it weren't for the Queen of the Demon Realm, Musian might not have been able to experience the mystery of the Forest of Trial formation so smoothly. Musian looked up at the gradually darkening sky outside and said, it's almost nightfall. Let's rest here temporarily today. Musian has memorized the formation secrets of this Forest of Trial. He will study it more at night when he sleeps with the Yes sisters. He thinks that he will make greater improvements soon. However, Musian is not in a hurry. After all, the sect assessment can be considered an adventure. After sharing hardships with the girl in this cave, the relationship between each other will become stronger. As for this sect assessment, wait until he masters the formation tonight. It will be decided by him how many people from Canghai Peak can pass the assessment.